And we're live.
Hello, everybody. Back again today, Thursday, the 27th of July, with Chris from Canada, Ceres from Holland, Patricia's there from the UK, me from the UK, and I think a few more people are joining the hangout today. And then one of the questions that came up in the chat room before we'd even started was that what did we live on? That they've drilled down 12 miles and it's solid. Well, I'm just going to hand you over to Chris, who's going to explain that it's not solid. Well, it's semi-solid, but he's going to talk about it. So over to you.
Yes, when I looked at the research of the Cola 8 project when I was in the industry.
Yeah, sorry, just to explain that Chris is was in the mining and minerals industry, and he was a quality insurance inspector, so he's quite qualified in what he's going to tell you. There you go, Chris. Sorry.
Yeah, so we were doing research, like to pre-qualify some of our projects. We'd have to look at the research of other areas and so forth, and do some calculations to pre-quantify or quantize expected subduction. If we drilled a hole into the ground and then pressurized a well, or started using what they call SAGD, which is steam-assisted gravity drain systems. You pump steam into the ground to pressurize the hole, and then the oil or whatever you're trying to bring up will come up based on that pressure. And then when you close out the well, you'd have to be able to figure out what the expected subduction might be, which is, how much will it collapse over time. So that's part of the SAGD process and the fracking process. It's the same idea. You drill a hole in the ground and pressurize it. So I did have a chance to look at the Cola 8, some of the Cola 8 research, and try to base some of our opinions, our professional opinions based on that. The findings of that project, which was the Cola 8 drill, it ran for something like 20 years. I pulled up an article here just in Wikipedia. You can look it up in Wikipedia and read up on it. But the main thing that came out of that project was that it was essentially described as boiling with hydrogen as the mud. They got down to a point in the ground where the pressure was so intense that the drill could no longer penetrate what essentially was a liquid slurry mud, but it was under such pressure that the hydrogen atoms and the carbon atoms essentially formed what you could describe as a liquid diamond grit sandpaper. So as the drill tried to penetrate that pressure zone, the moving particles were under such intense pressure, and they're made of like solid carbon, which is hard as diamond. It would just chew the end off of the drill bits, and these were carbide tip, drill bits, a foot diameter or greater. I think one was like 24 inches, and it just melted them down essentially from the pressure itself. So it's like you're working a drill on a piece of wet sandpaper. And then when the mud came out of the casing, it was described as boiling with hydrogen. So the pressure differential was immense. The temperatures weren't that great. I think they ran around 300 degrees or something, if my memory serves me correctly. But as the hydrogen that was under intense pressure rose to the surface, it would expand. And as it expanded, it would start to boil just due to the change in atmospheric pressures, or the pressure differential between the subsurface and the top side. So it's not exactly solid. It's more of a liquid slurry. And basalt, it was a basalt type of construct, which to me lends to the fact that it's a dielectric subsurface. It's not a hot molten iron core, like we're led to believe. And part of the reason for that is when you look up even just the Curie temperature. This is just a quick search, Curie temperature of iron. And you can go to any site that talks about the Curie temperature of iron.
I do remember watching a little bit myself when I was watching about the Russian one drilling down, and they thought the further they went down that it would get more solid. But it did have whatever it was, always had water components in it. It was
so it's like a granite mix of basalt granite, but it's amorphic, so it means it's not actually solid. It's a particle system of granite, rock, and crystal, and carbon mixed with water and mud and slurry. It's a high pressure. It's not actually solid. That's exactly what happens. Too.
So is that a bit of a shock for everybody in the chat room? And is it Skyfly? Who was it that asked the question? I've forgotten now. And I've got to go back up.
And the reason the globe model fails is, one of the major reasons the globe model fails for me is due to the ferromagnetic properties of iron, right? Liquid iron, if you take iron, a piece of magnetic iron, you can pre-magnetize it if you want. Doesn't matter. You can heat it up, and as you heat it, it will lose its magnetic properties. And then there's a certain temperature when it becomes non-magnetic. We call that the Curie temperature. So your iron can't hold a charge. It can't hold any magnetic properties whatsoever. It just loses all its phase. It goes up with it's like a phase transition. So the molecules in the iron and their charges, so it can't hold a field anymore. It's just too random. So you can read up on, if you're really into the technical side of it, you can read up on the Curie law and the temperatures and susceptibility and permeability of irons and electricity and stuff. So the short story of that is that there's no way physically possible that a spinning ball with an iron core can hold a magnetic field at all, period. Nothing will do that. Physics. So.
Wow, well, I didn't know that. I just thought it was going to be solid down there with these water droplets in it. So does that mean there's loads of water down there then as well?
Well, there's definitely, I wouldn't classify it as necessarily water, but it has the potential to become water because it's hydrogen rich and carbon rich and mineral rich. And as it cools and starts to decompress, it can fuse into water and reach the surface as pure, clean water eventually. So it's a gradient, right? It's not water that far down. It's not necessarily water, but as it rises, it becomes water as it diffuses through the medium.
So the further out it comes, the less solid it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
The further down you go, the less solid it is, and the closer to the surface you get, the more solid it becomes because it freezes. It freezes. Yeah. Like when we talk about iron, for example, like molten iron, it's molten at a certain temperature, and iron in a solid state is actually frozen, right? It's actually frozen. It freezes at a certain temperature.
So what does everybody think of that then? Yeah, I thought it was going to be the other way around. We always assume it's more solid down there, but it's not then.
No, it's the reverse, yeah. That's part of, as the sunlight and magnetic field, as it all kind of converges, it generates the required energies to essentially manifest matter. So that's why it's always expanding. It's growing relative to the energy that's absorbed within the system. It's a particle fluid that's like a fluid dynamic particle system. So the more energy it absorbs, the greater it starts to become, which is what's pushing the plates apart as far as the plate tectonics and pushing all the continents apart relative to the central source.
There's another question, actually. I think that you have mentioned this before, but it doesn't matter if you mention it again. Mark Ofsky asks, where does lava come from then?
Let's see if I can find a good diagram of that one.
I think you told us before, but it's just worth...
I had one open here and might actually explain some of that. I got too many tabs open here. I'm trying to filter through them here. But.
That's all right, Chris.
All right.
He's coming, guys.
Here's a good one.
What's that diagram you're showing, Chris? You might have to do that representing again. You might have to represent it again, because that's a relationship between the source trajectory coordinates. What's that one then?
It's black here. Doesn't update yet.
Which one's on the screen here?
Okay.
All right, here.
Yeah, it was a signal shutdown as well. A slowdown. You can hear you slow down the audio, and then the sharing stops as well. Yeah, we see.
Can you see it now? All right.
Yes, that's it.
So this is a geologist fellow that I've actually contacted him in person, and I have his permission to share his work. His name is Norbert Brugge, I think so you might pronounce it in German. Brugge. Brugge. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, but Norbert is his first name. He's a geologist from Germany. And he's been doing a ton of work on the glass, the Libyan glass in the desert of Libya, and studying that field and the craters. So there's all the craters in the Libyan desert, and the characteristics are similar across the board. There's an uplift around the ring, which creates like a dike area around where the center charge was. And so this is basalt. So what basalt is essentially crystal and granite and iron. So this is it just combines to make a basalt type of granite, and it raises. So what happens is when a lightning strike hits the ground, or hit the ground in the past, I mean this isn't happening now, but in the past, it would create like a fulgurite tunnel down the center of the strike, which is the negative pole zone of the actual field. And then the next, where the iron raises around the arc strike, is positive. So this would be a negative center and a positive pole ring, which is what creates these craters and uplifts and pulls the basalt right out of the ground as it forms it. So it'll form it instantly and then raise it up, and then it freezes. After the strike is over, it just cools down and becomes stone. And this is so you can see where the pipe goes down through the center, and you can see how the lightning creates all these areas under the ground. So then what happens is, because it remains a magnetic center point, then the magnetic field focuses at that point where the strike occurred, because now it has a connection to the deeper earth ground and the dielectric field. So then that's where magma would form after the fact and then flow to the surface, because the field is still present after the strike. And you can see that how it forms all these craters. So these are all desert craters. He's got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures on here about these craters. And if I go back to, I think this might be his first page, he's done the chemical analysis on the Libyan glass. And what you'll notice, if I scroll, where's the glass here? There's some pictures I wanted to show you that helps explain this stuff. So these are bits and pieces of the glass that he's got under the microscope. And you'll notice that they have inclusions of iron, all kinds of titaniums, different metals, metal ores, and gas bubbles. And what's interesting with the gas bubbles is they're elongated in this fashion. So you can see that when the glass was formed, and the gas was present in the field, that it was moving. It was flowing just like you're spinning, cookie dough in a blender. So the gas bubbles and the yeast bubbles in your bread dough were being stretched until you stopped spinning it. But what happened was they froze in these elongated fashion. So the carbon distillates kind of went to one side, and the gas remained in the other zone as inclusions in the glass. And what you'll find is, if you scroll down through his site, the temperatures that were required to form this glass are well above 1400, which is way hotter than anything real. This is those are plasma temperatures, electric temperatures. So the glass was definitely formed in a plasma-rich or plasma-charged field of temperatures. And this glass, and they know this because that's the temperature it requires to even begin to melt this glass down. So you have to reach at least 1400 degrees, which is one of these undeniable proofs that this glass was formed, and this is the only place you find it. So it was taken from the ground during the storm, ejected way up into the plasma pause or the plasma layer of the charged storm itself, melted down instantly, and then fell back down.
There's another question in the chat room from Charles. He asks, did Tesla have anything to say regarding volcanoes?
Sure, I don't. He may have. I don't know. The only thing I'm familiar with his work is the towers and all of his inventions. I've read through a lot of his patents. I don't recall coming across anything to do with volcanoes. But
just to say hello, Billy.
Hello, good people. How are you doing today?
You wanted to come on today, but I sent you the link, and there is someone in the chat room who actually wants to join. Charles, but I need an email address.
Mostly.
Sorry, carry on, Chris. Whoa. So, did you say before that they're like dump grounds? Was that what you said on another hangout before, or not? Did I mishear that?
No, I don't think so. No.
Oh, okay then. So why do we have these places with all this volcanic stuff in them then?
Well, that's where the lightning made connection to the ground, and then it creates a fulgurite tube. Essentially, it just makes a hole in like a tube in the ground, like a root in a tree that's hollow. And then because it's magnetically charged and a focal point for the magnetism, then the magnetism continues to melt down rock, and so it allows a path and it creates the heat. So they're hot spots where the charge was originally focused. So these are just some images that are related to the process. So what this is if you take wet wood and put an electrode on either side and then zap it with electricity, and people use this for art, but it's an actual process just to describe. You can see the same process will start to form.
Yeah, and we have
ironically this.
Sorry, Marie in the chat room wanted to know what you thought about the trees, but I think I remember that one is that a lot of this happened when we had all that big fusion, the
cataclysmic storms, yeah,
and it caused things to happen and caused things to come out. So the trees, you're not into the tree theory, are you, that much, Chris, if that's correct?
Well, places like Devil's Tower, where they're like the basalt columns and Giant's Causeway and all that, in my opinion, it's the same process. It's the electric strike forms the basalt, and then as the basalt froze from liquid to solid, it creates an octagonal shape because it's still within a magnetic charge, basically a state of magnetic charge, and it just fractures as it freezes according to its charge density, which makes the same octagonal shape. And that's partially due to surface tension too. As it freezes, like the surface tension creates zones of fracture zones, which tend to be a octagonal or a hexagonal or octagonal shape as well. The same way that mud will crack on a dry lake bed or in a mud puddle, where if you notice the next rainstorm you have, go and look at the mud as it freezes or solidifies in the sunlight, it'll start to create the same similar shapes. Except you got to scale it up by billions of times. This is just a picture of New Orleans to New Mexico, the Gulf of New Mexico. You can see the same type of shape will set up. Right, that's the way the electric charge flowed. So what happens is first the electric charge forms the surface, and then the water fills in the hole. It just fills in the path. So water will, as it rains and collects in the trench that's made by the electric field. So first the electric happens.
look at that man's hand. What's happened to that man's hand? God, it's burning. Ooh.
Yeah, I was going to skip down. Yeah, I don't know why it's similar. They're talking about arc flash and the dangers of electricity. So I'll just bundle that in case it freezes. That search just rendered some strains, some not so. This is also the dielectric field of the where the moon interlays with the field of the Earth plane. So it's sort of high. I think I've discussed it before. Where you can take the Earth's magnetic field and layer it over top of this, and you'll see some type of focal point.
Well, Marie says thanks very much. That was interesting. So, yeah, we're learning every day, guys. Everything's different to what you think it is, and we're really lucky. I mean, even Billy's done so much research. Series, Chris, thank you so much for, without, well, we'd all be thinking different things, wouldn't we? Rather than the truth.
Exactly.
Well, part, at least. But it's all part of the same truth.
Yeah.
I'm going to share something a little bit different here, then, because I do want to try to get to. There's a point here I want to get to with people that want to just kind of surf, use Google Earth to surf, to look for these places, because it's fascinating. I'd like to spend a lot of time doing that. I share that. So this is the quick and dirty way to do it. Just go to Google Earth and you'll have to just kind of say it's not a globe. It's just flat.
Yeah, you're just using that. Don't worry, guys. We're not a globe.
I'm not going back to the globe. No, I just want to use their imagery, right, to show you what's going on here. So
yeah, if you glue the images together, you will have only a single square.
Exactly, yeah. But this is actually the surface of the Earth that's after the arc strikes have gone through. So all of these areas, this is actually, I think, in South America, and they're everywhere. So what you can see is that because this one was a negative, it's going to create, so it's a high or elevated area. So there's iron rich and then negative at the top. So it was a negative strike, and still to this day, the negative zones are cold. Right? It's a magnetic rich area is left after the strike. So the same is in reverse. The same process that allows for volcanoes also creates the ice caps on the tops of these mountains, because now this is a negative center pole. And you can actually zoom in to see that this was the center of the strike, and this is where the elevated area around the crater on the top of the mountain, and then it remains cold.
Can I just say one thing? Ask one thing, Chris. This all happened at the same time, or this all happened separately? Just for the people in the chat room who maybe haven't heard all this before.
Well, I think over the course of history, like obviously some of these, like this zone, this one zone, blast zone here, would have been an instantaneous type of thing. It would have happened all at once. But I think over the course of history, there was definitely more than one event. So it's, you go back to the first oldest stories in ancient history that talk about, the first destruction of the earth by fire. And then, you come up through history, there's major cataclysmic events, the fall of Rome and Nero and the Sodom and Gomorrah stories about people running for their lives and being turned into pillars of salt. So that's basically a description of what they saw. They looked back at the city and it turned into a pillar of salt. Well, that's basalt rising out of the ground. I mean, mountains just poof, salt. And they weren't lying, because it was salt, actual basalt stone, just instantly. And then obviously you get to the period of the deluge and the floods and Moses' times. So I mean, it seems to be definitely cyclical in my opinion. So, but massive zones like this one is just one. This would have been one single strike, instantly creating all of this in one shot. And you can see, like I was saying before, that one pole would be negative charged and have an ice cap, and then you just go to the next spot, relatively close to it. So this is an ice cap, and here's the positive pole within the same charged strike, right, at the same time. And this one has an iron-rich top, right? So the peaks are the positives, and then the iron-rich, and this is a hot spot. And I'm going to stop sharing this because I wanted to show you some other stuff here.
Just say hello. We've got Charles with us now on the Hangout. Charles.
Hi. How you doing?
Hello. Oh, you're from the UK, from Nottingham. Cool. So how are you then? You're obviously a newer person on this panel. So how are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, thank you. Struggling to hear you.
Are you?
Just that I'm talking over this guy that's chatting, so.
Chris. Yeah, that's because if you're watching the live feed, it's going to be behind us. So don't watch the live feed.
Okay.
Just leave the live feed for now, or turn the live feed off.
Okay.
Sorry, Chris is just going to show us something, and then we'll include you in the conversation. Chris, what were you going to show us?
Not the Hangout.
We've lost Charles already. He's pressed the wrong button, guys.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick screen share here. I'm just switching applications here, so I got to jump out of the Google Earth thing and jump into something else here.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. Okay, so this one here is a shot of essentially the magnetic field, and it shows where the high and low spots are. But this is also, so you kind of keep your focal point on this one here, just below. So this would be considered 0 point, and this would be one of the anomalies here. This would be considered the area of the South Atlantic anomaly. Not only magnetically, but this is also where the tides are. This is actually a tide, the tidal focal point of that same anomaly. So where the tides are the greatest, except for Canada, up in Northern Canada, the rise and fall of the tides are relative to that point. And this is where, I'll zoom in a bit on this one. And you can see that this central point here, the South Atlantic anomaly, is also, this is a focal point of the magnetic flux area, which is right in that spot, always. Yeah, I mean, it all focuses in on this. A lot of it focuses in on that point. And what I found fascinating about that, here's where it gets kind of interesting. We know that after these arc strikes occurred, so this is in Lake Nicaragua. So after the arc strikes occur, this is a diagram measuring the gravitational, what they call gravity, but I'm going to use that term very loosely. So this is what I would deem more as an electromagnetic charge density differential. How's that sound? Right? So after the strike happens, there's an electromagnetic focal point that creates a charge differential and change in density, which means the weight is different. So now, so when I use gravity, I'm just saying basically that, because they call it gravity in these charts. So you'll see a residual anomaly in the charge density and the mass density. So this is how it weighs differently around that strike point. They've actually mapped it in a lot of cases. And
you said before that these sort of mountains would have been made in a second, a couple of seconds, whoosh, charged out of the ground.
Yeah, just bang, and there it was. Yeah. Yeah, and you can find some interesting stories too. There's some ancient Native American stories about the bear around the Devil's Tower, and there was 2 boys that went wandering off. I don't know the story exactly, but you can look it up. It's the bear story, about Native American bear story. So there's these 2 boys that went hunting, and all of a sudden the great bear came down and caused this mountain so they were actually on Devil's Tower, and the ground was receding below them, and they were being risen up into the sky, and it took them days to find their way back home. Right. So when it happened, they were actually in the middle of it, and that's the legend of the bear story of how Devil's Mountain formed. So it's fascinating how those events get, into our history and mythology. What correlates this for me the most is if you take, so I showed you this picture up here. This is the center point of the South Atlantic anomaly. Now you just watch this. This is an alleged gravitational anomaly of the moon. This is the moon's surface. So there's the magnetic anomaly at the same point location on the moon. Right?
It's like you see
So you consider
in the dark green as well.
Right. So if you consider, okay, well this is the Grand Canyon area and the mountains coming down through, you can almost see that this is North America. This is Russia with the Tunguska vent location. Russia, the hotspot in China where the mountains are. This would be Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. If you overlaid the Earth map on this, you'll find that all these locations.
It is a reflection of the Earth. Yeah.
Is a reflection of the Earth, literally a reflection of the Earth in gravitational and electrodynamics. So this would be where the dielectric.
But then also mirrored.
It's mirrored, yeah. So the moon being a dielectric, essentially a semi-solid dielectric metallic object, is connected electrically with the Earth's surface. And if you consider that focal point 0, like we were saying before, right, it rotates in that analemma, but it's always focused at the same point.
Yeah.
So the anomalies would line up perfect, right? It's always going to be the same. That's why the same face faces us all the time, because it's locked into that center point. It's just kind of wobbling around in the figure 8 type of pattern in the analemma, because it's on this type of setup, right? So you imagine that this center point here would be where the moon is locked into the phase of the magnetic dipole. So you have a north-south pole. This is the equator line, and the moon is locked in here, and the sun's doing the same thing, wobbling around in this type of field.
Yeah.
Right, and this is the focal point. So this here lines up exactly with the South Atlantic anomaly off the coast of Africa, 0 point, right? Because this is the magnetic flux of the Earth's surface. This is the tides of the Earth's surface, and this is the gravitational anomaly of the moon.
How high is
and
this
it's all the same.
map actually taken? I wonder. The magnetic map, is that land-based, sea-based, air-based? I don't know.
This map here, I'm not sure how high that is, but
That of the Earth, the magnetic map of the Earth.
oh yeah, I'm not sure what the altitude would be. I mean, it should be. I mean, it can't be that far away, right? Yeah, because then you lay them all on top of each other. You end up with, well, this is why we map it the way we end up mapping it, because we're following a compass, and we're essentially what we end up doing is mapping a magnetic field.
Yes.
And it's an illusion, right? Right, because we're trying to map this, right?
Oh, it just looks like the magnetics again, doesn't it?
Yeah, the whole thing is. That's why I'm trying to do it relative to the dipole moments of the toroid, right? So this, if you imagine, this is the circular center of the toroid that I've been showing in the model. Right, so this is the donut on the inside, and this is the toroidal field on the outside, and the focal point of the dipole field is this anomaly, 0 point on the flat map. Right, so when we flatten it out, that's where it is. Yeah, I know it's hard to get your head around, but that's what's going on.
Yeah, I just don't think, I mean, obviously people into flat earth, people coming here will see you repeat this over and over, but I think just loads of people just have no idea how magnetical everything is. And this Ken Wheeler thing.
Yeah.
Always.
And maybe, Sirius could show his animation, which is essentially showing this here, right? So we're in this zone on the flat plane, mapping this, and then the next one would just repeat as a chain of, and we're on the inside looking out, so they would just chain up. Logically, they would chain up in that type of a system.
It is the first idea I had.
Yeah.
You need these several layers between every realm. Yeah.
And that's, I think, what the ancients were trying to tell us too in the carvings, right? It's you go back to that cosmology. You know, this is the dome, right? The flat plane with the shoal underneath, the magnetic field, and there's the four pillars, which is the four dipole points that relate back to this, back to the map. So there's the 4 poles, 1, 2, 3, 4 poles, which are actually carved in stone. So this is what I call an early rendition of a 3-dimensional model carved in stone, trying to describe that the fields are interacting. And so I think the ancients were well aware of how the system was operating as a dielectric plane, and we're on the plane in the middle. Yeah. It's just what do you guys think? I mean, for me, it's just way too much coincidental data to be not.
Yeah, you've researched those, haven't you? And you found like that's in ancient civilization. Is that everywhere?
Everywhere, yeah. You can go back to ancient Sumeria and you'll find the very similar thing, and then it translates directly into the. Many of the old Bibles have this image as shoal. It's actually labeled with the firmament. And the sun and the moon are in the firmament, and the shoal, the flat plane, and this shoal is called, what would be called the deep, right? The deep below, right? Which where oil would be coming from. So they probably found oil, seeping from the ground. And when you look at this object in a 3-dimensional sense, and then convert it into this setup from a magnetic electric standpoint, it's essentially the same construct. Because if you try to walk around this, so if you imagine this as a flat map, and you tried to walk around this with a compass and actually map the terrain as you moved around, you would end up with the center pole, like a center equator line, and then you'll end up mapping it according to your compass readings.
Golly, when this does come out about the fact that we are flat, I mean, like out into the outside world, imagine how much work they're going to have to do to change all the stuff that they're showing us is how we find our information.
Yeah, I think what they ended up doing. If you take an electrical field like this and wrap it onto a ball, it's a whole lot easier to figure out. Right? It's a whole lot easier to locate to that center. The center point, which is actually in the moon and on the ground, right? So that's a fictional center point that they just snap it to this point, and then they just took this and wrapped it around a ball, and it makes it a whole lot easier. So I understand the logic, right? Yeah.
Also, as we're on this subject, there is a question from Mark. There's loads of questions tonight, you guys. Mark, do you, Chris, think the craters on the moon are also caused by similar electrical activity? I mean, I kind of know the answer, but this is the chat room asking.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, because if you look at the moon's surface, and I've talked to Dave Marsh, and he's done some fantastic work with the telescopes and the pictures and everything. You can't really find any what they would call meteor strikes on the moon that have an angular momentum. There's no skipping. There's no, digging out of the surface where something came in at an angle. They're all dead on straight, and they create the circular craters. So that, for me, tells me that's 100% electrical cause. So it's sorted out.
If it's a rendering that we're seeing, how did the strikes get on the moon then?
Well, they were short. It's an arc strike where the moon connected to the Earth. So an actual electrical strike against the moon's surface, and the moon is. Is
it something that wouldn't be able to happen today? This is something that happened a long time ago when the moon was a bit different.
I'm not sure if it happened today or not. I mean, if the moon was close enough and got close enough to and the Earth was charged, right, and it had enough charge built up in the system, it could probably short out again and strike.
Show something.
Right.
Yes, I've just thought about something. One of our members, David James, he put some pictures of the moon, and as he's looking at it, he said, these don't look like craters, they look like bubbles, as if it had been bubbling.
There's both, yeah. There's some that are craters, and that's getting back to, like, I don't think I have any pictures here. But like I was showing on the ground in Mexico there, or South America, some craters are raised plateaus, so that's the mesas, and that's a negative pole. So if it raises up and creates that mesa, it's a negative charge. It's like an envelope with negative charge distribution. And if it creates the crater, then you'll find a center pole at the point in the center, and it'll create a crater. So both will occur. It's just different polarity. That's all. You'll find it like a stone sphere. It'll be created by a negative charge, which will push the envelope outwards if the center is negative polarized. And you'll find that the sphere will be solid in the center if it was a positive pole when the stone was created. And that's referring to the Costa Rica stones and so forth. Yeah, so some of them will look like they're raised and some look like craters. It both will happen. But you'll find that both of them are also like a center strike. It's not like a skipping thing. It's always centered to the charge point where it strikes.
So what would have had to happen for the moon to have these strikes on it? The moon was closer to us.
Yeah, either it was close enough to the surface to arc strike and actually create the electrical connection, or the surface became charged enough out to that layer, out high enough, that it would be able to create the connection. The connection would have had to, like if I look at that picture again.
Can I just, there's an internal message on the Hangout. Series, can you look at the internal message? I just asked Siri something. He's not looking.
Oh, possibly.
Yeah, so it's charge distribution, right? So if the surface got charged enough and the moon was in close enough, then the two would connect, and then you get a zap, like a lightning strike, similar to what we have when sprites, like a sprite strike. The lightning will hit the ground, and then the sprite will go up from the top of the cloud up into the charged layer above. At the same time, the electric blue light will hit the ground, and pink light will go to the top. So if the moon was in that layer where the pink plasma goes up from the cloud at the right time, then it would zap it.
It must have been much closer then.
Yeah, I think if you follow the electric universe type of cosmology too, it's at one time Mars and Saturn and Jupiter and the moon were all a whole lot closer than they are now to the surface.
Because you reckon the moon is semi-metal, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's mostly the dielectric metals. And it's semi-solid. And Mars appears to be, the red irons and the ferrites and more of a positive.
This is a real asking question one today. Marie has asked, what about mud fossils and the floods?
Mud fossils and the floods?
Yeah, Chris knows absolutely everything.
Well,
what about
the floods were certainly real. I mean, they certainly happened. There's tons of evidence that shows that, they happen. And, we find on the tops of mountains, we find that there's seashells on the top, 14,000 feet high. There's evidence of the layering. Even today in Petersburg, Russia, right, there's several stories of buildings that are still under the ground, and they're digging stuff up all the time. You can dig underneath they dug down in downtown London, I think it was recently, and brought up ancient Roman artifacts 3-4 stories deep that were covered over by a mud flood. So I mean, that's undeniable evidence to me that those things actually occurred. As far as the mud fossils and giants 300-400 feet tall, I don't go quite that far with it, but because there is evidence that we use to date some of the ancient caves, right? You'll find human DNA in some of the ancient caves that they say is, quite old, and it's just what's remedy. It actually absorbs into the dirt, and that's where the humans that were inhabiting the cave at the time, used the washroom or bled or did whatever they did. Life happens in the caves. So they were giving birth in there. They were, everything was happening in that cave. So they left DNA in the mud and the dirt, and it's still there today. So, but I think just because you find human DNA inside of a chunk of rock doesn't necessarily mean that it was at one time an actual living rock, right?
Just to say, Arwyn's joined the hangout. Hello, Arwyn.
Hey, hello, Karen.
Hey, Arwyn, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, thanks for letting me join.
No
Cool.
problem.
How are you, Arwyn?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
Cool. I just want to go back to this bit. You showed us the other day, basically, almost where the water had actually come in, and this is why there are these deserts and that way. It come across Africa and the great swathe of water, and then it left the sort of all over Africa, and that's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, it followed the path. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find huge ones.
Yeah, I can't. It would have been.
Actually, sort of water routes, because you see the river system where it's just acting like a complete root system. And I've seen a lot of those images.
If I go back and share that again. Yeah. Yeah, so this was just that one area I've shown in South America there that shows the polarity of it all. But as you zoom out, you'll see that the polarity, the focal point of the strike was here, and the general polarity on the outside was creating all of this on the outside with a positive swirl. So it would have been a swirling type of effect as it formed that region.
I think for many people, this might, in the chat room, unless they've heard you say this before, it's like, wow, that happened to us. And it's like
Yeah,
we should know this.
You can track.
It's part of our history, shouldn't it? It should be something that's in as part of our history.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it goes all the way back to even some of the Pangea type of cosmology, where things were at one time connected. I mean, it's not hard to tell that any young kid can figure out that this piece of the puzzle goes with this piece of the puzzle, and it's been being separated in the middle. If you look at the globe, but the path can be tracked, right? It's the path of the storm came down through this direction, and it swirled its way through, right? And where these strike zones are located, I mean, this was Cappadocia is another great one to look at in Turkey. Cappadocia, we looked at that before, and you can see that it's a center focal point right there, right? So that's one of the central negative focal poles. And then the rest just kind of swirls. You can see the swirling around it on the outside. So that would have been a focal point. And then you go to any of these spots here. You can surf around and look for a dark spot.
Someone says in the chat, oh, hang on a minute, that's a globe. But Chris is just showing you.
Yeah, I'm just using Google Earth because it's a faster model to use to try to show you where the actual strikes happened. So there's a negative, if you zoom in on it. So this would be a negative strike crater. Right, so that's negative polarity. And then it has a matching positive polarity on the other side. You'll find an iron deposit somewhere that'll match up to it in the circuit. Yeah. So these are all formations created in a flash. There's one I wanted to try and show you here that's interesting. They spell it gas crater. The door to hell. Let's see. Let's go to the door to hell. Appropriately named, eh? A little quick Google Earth tour here. So this is the Davarza gas crater in Dan, I think it's how it's pronounced. So what happened was back in, I think, the 40s, this thing's been burning for 40 some years now. They were drilling for natural gas, and they made a mistake and basically it cratered around the well. So they're drilling a hole in the ground, and then the whole thing collapsed because they hit a pocket and it fell through. And when it did that, all the natural gas started coming out of the hole, and the engineers at the time were like, what are we going to do? They were afraid that the whole thing could explode, right? Or collapse and continue to collapse and catastrophe. So they lit it on fire, thinking they could burn it out, right? And eventually it would stop burning. But it's been burning ever since. It's never stopped burning. You can actually Google this, the Darvaza gas crater, and you'll find out that this has been burning for some 40 or 50 years, nonstop. So we created that one.
Oh, we've got Anthony, Life of Riley, and I think Charles has tried to come back as well.
Hola.
Hello there, Anthony. How are you?
Good.
Hey, ¿qué pasa, amigo? Life of Riley.
How is everybody?
We're okay, thank you very much. We were just looking at you. I know you want to ask a question, Anthony. I just want to check. Charles, are you there?
He appears to be sharing his camera, but his camera appears to be blocked.
Right. Charles, are you there?
Nothing is there, but
Right. Well, we just carry on then. Do you have a question, Anthony?
Have a good time to maybe change the topic.
Sure.
Want to change the topic? Go on then.
Only respectfully, of course. There's a lot of talk about the eclipse. You know, the North America eclipse in September, and it's the talk of the flat Earth is that it appears that the shadow is going to be going the opposite way to what it should be going on the heliocentric model, and I don't really understand it. And I'm being honest. I know the idea of what they're talking about, but I was just wondering if anybody knew how to explain why the shadow on the heliocentric model would travel west to east rather than east to west. Does anybody know the answer?
oh yeah, that one. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I saw the question kind of go through, but I didn't do the research yet to try to put it into the model to see why it's happening the way it is. I know that also on August 21st, it's a new moon, right? So it's supposed to be a new moon that day. And
Don't they claim the shadow is going west to east? Isn't that what they're saying?
Yeah, that's what NASA is saying. NASA are explaining it in the context that the moon is orbiting the Earth quicker than the Earth rotates. That seems to be the explanation that some NASA bod gave.
Yeah.
And obviously it only orbits the Earth once every 30 days. So it's like that can't be the explanation. So we've either misinterpreted that which was said, or he's got it wrong. But in any event, the claim is that the shadow of the Earth, the shadow of the moon is going to go west to east in conflict with the heliocentric model. And I was wondering, is it actually conflicting with the heliocentric model, or are we missing something? Because if it is conflicting, let's be really clear on what the conflict is. And let's see if we can get ballers, big ballers protagonists like Slice Barkane or whatever, to explain it on some kind of model, so we can basically use it against them after the event. Because I don't know if it is a conflict, but it's being bandied around as though it is a conflict with the heliocentric model. So really, it's a validation check on whether or not it actually is or not, or has someone got it wrong?
I would say that either the sun is faster or the moon is slower.
Yeah, it's
moving shadow.
It's the three orbit. It's the three bodies problem again, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think Dave Marsh would be probably the best one to check. I mean, I know for sure. The moon's supposed to go from an east to west, trajectory the same as the sun's supposed to rise east to west.
Yeah, NASA is saying that the shadow's going to go west to east.
West to east, yeah, they do. That's what they're saying, and it's doing that S curve again, right? It's actually going to start in the northwest of somewhere off the coast of California, and end up down by Florida, and it's doing an S curve traveling east to west, or west to east. Sorry. So you're right. I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense. But.
No, I mean, there's probably an explanation for it, but it's the three bodies thing. You're trying to not correlate. You're trying to coordinate the rotation of the Earth with the orbit of the Moon and how the Sun interacts with it in three bodies, and it's really hard to work that out. And you do kind of need a PC to work it out, a computer model to illustrate it, but maybe somebody's got the explanation that makes it simple. I don't know, and that's really what I was looking for. So it's kind of like that's the claim. It seems to go backwards. If it does seem to go backwards, it's just really about, can we validate the claim? Is it a hole in heliocentricity, or is it ignorance on the flat Earth part? Because it does actually do what they predict it would do. It's just relative to all the three bodies, then it just appears to be backwards.
It's a good question.
I'll try to set it for you. I'll try and do it in the model. I do have a model of the...
I think the Moon is slower. But yeah, I from all the eclipse events that I have ever seen, it's usually that the Sun moves behind the Moon. So that basically it catches up. So it comes from the right side, and the Sun's always, well, basically in the south, traveling from east to west. So it would, the eclipse, the Rahu or the Moon, or however you like to see it, would approach it from the west.
That's correct, Arwijn.
Yeah, so far
I
as
thought we have
It
13.
doesn't catch up. It does. It's not like it catches up with the Sun. So it doesn't come from. As you're looking at it, it wouldn't come from the left. It would always come from the right.
I thought the Moon is faster though, because there's 13 moons a year. 4 moons a year, which people
No.
don't understand.
A lunar day is 24 hours and 50 minutes.
Yes. It's slightly slower.
Yeah, just by about an hour every day. And then each day it gains 15 degrees.
Let's try it live and see what happens here. I'm just curious. You got me
of course.
curious now.
And after 14 days is when we get a full moon. And then after that, after another 14 days, we get a new moon, which is a 28-day moon cycle.
Let's try it live. Why not? Yeah. Just grab that Earth.
And anybody worrying in the chat room, he's just showing you on Google Maps because it's easier to just show it.
I was actually going to ask Cara from Earth Discussions 2.0 if she was able to do this on, what's it called? Stellarium, because she is the Stellarium queen, kind of by her own volition. So I don't know whether it can be done. I'm not sure how Stellarium works myself. It probably should be, because she cites it as the model that is so predictable and so this, that, and the other. And I can't really work out how it's because there's 3 moving bodies all at once. It's not easy to conceptualize.
Let's just do rotate the Sun and rotate on the...
Anyway, Anthony, do you know Arwijn?
I've seen the name. I've never spoke with him.
No, we never talked directly.
Anthony Arwijn?
Oh, actually, I have spoke with him, actually. I can't remember where it was, but I have spoke with him quite recently.
Oh yeah, well today I was in your chat when you were on Jamie Brown's.
Oh, when I was giving Brenda a bit of hassle.
Oh yeah, but that was hilarious. But with Brenda, she never gives up.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, she doesn't give up, and I don't want to think she's a troll, but she does appear to be, because PMAR's ended up.
No, that's just her personality.
Yeah, well, I kind
She's
of
like a stubborn bull. She just keeps on pushing, And it's an admirable quality. It's just, you just can't get over the globe. That's all.
No, I mean, for everybody else that's wondering what we're talking about, I was in with Jamie Brown earlier on, and Brenda came in to talk about gravity. And my point was that gravity cannot be distinguished against density. They appear to be the exact same thing. Brenda was like, no, give me a link, I'll come in. So she came in, and we spent about an hour and 20 minutes trying to explain to me, because I played the I'm stupid, can you help me role. And I asked her, please tell me where I'm going wrong. They appear to be the same. And after an hour and 20 minutes, we didn't get any conclusion. And the conclusion overall was that she'd failed to persuade anybody in the chat that gravity was different to density. and she used things like pressure, and she used density and buoyancy. And each time I said, no, but you're still not telling me or showing me where gravity is. You're only telling me about pressure. I'm not asking about pressure. I'm asking about gravity and how it's different to density. And it went on and on and on and on and on and on. And in the end, the chat was basically saying, we're bored now. But that was the point. The point was you're unable to distinguish it. So it had to go on for that long for the chat to realize that they can't distinguish it. But yet Brenda was saying that we could. So it went on and on and on. And Brenda, in the end, she had to concede defeat because she failed to persuade anybody that it was any different to density, even though she claims it is. So it was enjoyable.
Yeah, it was funny, but I kind of, well, I have to admit that it seems like this density that you're mentioning is no longer the original concept of what it really is in a physical sense, because I don't know any law of density that would counter, well, the concept of gravity, because the theory of gravity is of course wrong. We all know this, but it's not wrong because there's no specific direction by which we can measure gravity, basically. But and there's no force. It's not measurable. They even admit it. But it's like a factor. And
I mean, Brenda described it as quote, a phenomena that we observe.
Yeah, well, you could call it that.
Yeah,
but it's more like a factor. It's a given. It's a thing that doesn't leave any measurable traces, like for example magnetics, which are clearly measurable, but you can deduct its constant when you do experiments. When you drop stuff, the things in a vacuum move at exactly the same speed, and this speed is a very measurable constant against the time. That's how they deduce gravity, but it's not a force that you can literally measure, and there's no way there's still no experiments that really counter gravity. They rather use magnetics to
the only conclusion that they can come to contrast gravity is that we can only prove gravity in space, and obviously at that point that's where you play the space might be the final frontier, but it's built in a Hollywood.
Well, the thing with space, and now you're talking about the theory of gravity, and the weirdest thing is that the gravity might be there and it's very measurable, but the theory of gravity is completely incorrect because it assumes that large masses are attracted to each other because of the mass, and that this is the force that's actually pulling everything together, and that's causing the gravity that we experience. But this is unproven. Basically, you only have that one experiment. What's the name again?
Cavendish.
Yes, exactly, the Cavendish experiment. But this is very flimsy, how do you say, not very reliable experiments, very easily tampered with. And
I don't know.
It's always done with metal spheres. So every time you use metals or any kind of electrostatic things like plastic, there's other influences that could cause these spheres to move, and it takes such a long time. It's very easy to tamper with it. It's very easy to do that. And
yeah,
I got an experiment. I thought it up like half a year ago, and it would clearly prove if there is any kind of gravitational pull because of the mass, by simply dropping two large objects in a vacuum in very close proximity to each other, and measuring it, laser precision if you want to, if you have the money to get lasers involved, and then just drop it in a long tube of vacuum and see if it's closer together at the bottom when it was dropped. Very simple experiment to prove if there's any kind of gravitational pull. But it's never mentioned by any scientist, so yeah, that tells me that it's not in their favor. Otherwise,
Okay,
they would
a
have
question
mentioned
from
this
chat.
type of experiment like every time gravity was mentioned.
Sorry, were you seeing the one from Mark, Billy? Go on, Billy.
Yes. Markovsky wants to know, does Chris think planets are large objects? Chris?
Oh, that's a tricky question. Yeah. Well, from there, as I could tell, some are solid and some are not, and from what we've seen from telescopes from readings from Jupiter, it appears to be more of a light than anything else. Venus appears to be solid. The moon appears to be solid or semi-solid. So the problem is everything we look at appears within our refractive index and the focal length of the camera that we're using. So determining the size, I think, is beyond my capabilities anyway.
I think that with regards to Jupiter and Saturn, take Jupiter for example, 360 million miles away. Okay, and
Yeah.
you expect us to see that with a telescope that's got a set range. Whatever telescope you've got, it's got a set range, and you can pretty much get it in focus, which tells me that whatever that range that telescope is, if you're getting it almost in focus to be able to see the spot, that tells me that whatever it is that we're looking at that's supposed to be 360 million miles away is really quite close, and it's definitely within the range of that telescope. So I don't think that whatever they are, I actually think the planets are some form of sound rather than light, and I think it's being manifested to us through vibrations, and the vibrations are being agitated by the atmosphere. But I think it's a sound that's coming from somewhere rather than a light source, and it's just being agitated by our own atmosphere, creating a light. Because they don't look real for me. I mean, you look at Saturn with the Saturn rings, and there's supposed to be a thin layer of rocks that are all orbiting in perfect alignment to the axis of Saturn, and we can see that from the Earth, and that's, I can't remember how many miles away that one is, and it doesn't make logical sense that we can see that far, and certainly not see a thin layer of rocks that are orbiting Saturn. We shouldn't really see these rings that they tell us about. So I question what they actually are. Are they actually real? So I just think they're lights.
Yeah, I've talked to Dave Marsh too a lot about that. You know, it's the atmosphere is like an anisotropy plane. So think of it as an anisotropy system, and light appears within the distance of however thick that anisotropy layer is. So everything we see, that's why you can focus on the moon and go to a star and it remains in focus. Everything we see is within that refractive index. So it all appears, everything we look at appears within that density, right? Beyond that, so everything we measure is reflecting off of whatever that is, including radio telescopes. That's been proven as well. They're reading what they think is the cosmic background, and it's just reflecting. It's the Earth reflection coming backwards. It's the magnetic field.
Could I just say,
I was going to bring up really quickly.
Can I just ask Billy, is Charles, are you there now?
Yes, I think it's working now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I was trying to do a simulation of the lunar eclipse there to see if it would actually work, to try and answer Anthony's question there to see what would happen. But
I've just found out that Saturn's 720 million miles away from the Earth.
720 million.
Yes, which is 1.2 billion kilometers. That's 720 million miles.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Absolutely.
They love the millions and the zeros, don't they? They just add loads and loads of zeros to everything.
Well, they try to compensate by saying that parallax is infinity and zero. It all appears that, you know, parallax is zero, and mess with your mind.
I was going to say, Arwijn did a very interesting video as of late where he discusses his theory of the equator and anti-equator on the north and south wall. I wonder if Arwijn wanted to explain a little bit. I dropped the link in the chat if everyone's interested. It's a really good study he put together, and it's worth the watch. Hey, Arwijn, do you want to speak on that at all, or?
Well, I guess it's mostly just a visualization aid. Like the concept was there already in my mind that, yeah, if you travel north, then the North Pole star starts to rotate up with you. So, and as you go south, it goes the other way. So on a flat rectangular looping Earth, basically, and that's what we're still going on here. If you would go north, then it would just keep on rolling. and the North Pole star would eventually turn the other way and then even disappear. Like it wouldn't be visible at any night, and you would see the South Pole star up instead, where the whole thing is spinning around. Yeah, so I made a drawing to sketch that out, how that would look, and I made a hangout about it.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a really, really nice study. Like I said, I linked it to in the chat, and it's worth the watch. I linked it on my
I'm
channel
very
as well.
satisfied about it. It's good.
Good job, though, Arwijn. Thank you.
Thanks.
I've got a question, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we believe we live on a flat Earth, and we've got an outer rim to that flat Earth. As
Maybe.
anybody, but maybe yes. Well, why doesn't somebody try to travel around the total outer rim and calculate the distance?
That did happen.
Instead of,
It has happened.
Pardon?
Yes.
It has? I'm not talking about going just due west all the time. I'm talking about going to the rim and then keep going along the outer rim and see what distance that comes to.
That this has been done, and the thing is that it's a shorter distance to travel around it, or within it, if you consider it as an ice ring around us, than would fit basically on the circle-centric map. Like it wouldn't fit in there. It's like too small. So there's this. Yeah, it's arguable if it's not actually a straight line, or roughly straight. Like there would be like curves and stuff, just how the ice is shaped, and it's very, very large, so it's hard to keep track, and it takes a long time to go around that whole thing. So whatever it is, it's not big enough in its circumference to get all the continents in. So that would point at that it's probably is more or less a straight edge, or like a line, a straight line looping east to west.
I just can't envisage it though.
Why is that?
But you do recognize that it's too small
I can't recognise the Earth I live on.
Continents on the circle-centric map. I brought this argument forth like half a year ago even. I talked about it. It's too small.
Well, no, I believe that I live on a flat Earth. I actually totally believe that. But to me, if I do live on a flat Earth, the outer rim has got to be huge.
It is.
We've got to be enclosed. We've got to be enclosed, and
why?
And in that enclosure, if there's a firmament, I mean, you don't believe in a firmament, Owen?
It depends on how you look at it. The firmament could simply be like it doesn't need to be a dome, especially if it's not circle-centric.
I just have to say that we have a friend,
dimension.
Who's, I think you might have been on with him, Alan. He's not around at the moment, but he worked for an electricity company and he used equipment, and he knew that there was a firmament there because the scalar waves came back immediately. So if the scalar waves went out and there was nothing there, they would keep going immediately. So he knows that there's a firmament and it's a frequency, but he couldn't tell if it was hard or he just knows it's a frequency.
Yeah, it's bounced back somehow.
Yeah.
And in my theory, and this is very personal, I don't have much to back it up, but it's how I visualized it in my visions at least, is that it's just the edge. It's beyond that point, matter does not exist. It doesn't have any room to go to. So it's just the edge, and it could be like a cell membrane type of experience. But just you can't go through, you'll bounce back, and you just can't penetrate it because matter does not exist beyond that line. So that's how I visualize that anyway. I don't know. that's the only thing that I know that supports the concept that there is a real firmament within in the third dimension, at least.
Yes, Charles. Our group is investigating the rectangular square 4D model of our Earth
Right. Okay.
and universe. So it's hard for us to conceptualize a concentric North Pole in the middle and the round pizza map, the A&E map. I know that's a model that's being presented throughout our flat Earth community, but we see several problems with it. But everyone has their own research and everything, so I'm not going to. But most of us here in the Sun and Moon, we do not hold to that model. We're
Okay.
researching the square 4D model, and we think that the. Go ahead.
So there'd be right angles then. There would. So if you travelled around the perimeter, you'd come to a right angle.
Well, Series is showing something. Maybe Series can talk a little bit to that. That's what we think it looks like. There's 3 squares. The land's in the middle. There's a square above and a square below. The square below is land. The square above is water. Series.
Yeah, I've orientated this from left to right, from south to north, to show how the wave is the orange wave, white.
Series, you're a bit quiet.
How the wave is actually shown on the triple square, and that wave presents how the latitudinal value is behaving on the XY grid of the photographic squares. Here you see it the other way around, how the Y value is behaving on the GPS format of precisely 360 times 180 degrees for a ball. And this is the map we know as the main square map. Through the scanning of the center square of the photographic map, I came across that it actually missed 5 degrees in the latitudinal scale. And that latitudinal scale happened to be forming a complete square beyond. And out of that, I could actually check the elevation data of the beyond parts. And so far, I figure the square here in the middle is
But someone's moving around a little bit and making a lot of noise.
practically only the crossing of the yellow and the blue line here. And there's a flower of life repeating pattern, what reappears in the square in the big circle, and then another one and another one, and eventually you have a blue one. What is the if you ask me, the center of the sky as the northern and the southern centers, and that the second blue line, what is the other side of the circle, what is actually joining together. And this is how I've drawn it in the 5th dimensional circle on a 2-dimensional plane, in that sense. And yeah, the circle is actually joining up and folds in itself again. And that forms the whole system of what we actually see. And I'm not sure how that actually works, but in between these, we are in the center, and the interference patterns of the bigger circle and squares are the next realms within the chain of realms, who are part of the donut field of a toroidal field. And that one is the upwards one, what you can't see here, because that's the actual top-down view, what you see. it's kind of you see from the heavens towards the earth. But that's what my original thought was. And Chris came with that there is a particular pattern in this toroidal chain, in that it takes at least the next square to actually line up with the flower of life grid, because that's the whole thing here. I am mixing the waves of the circles and the squares, and the circles are from the flower of life grid, where the circle of the flower of life itself is lining up within the square of just like in the middle, where we start with the actual beginning of the flower of life grid. And there are actually two at work, one north-south and one east-west. And east-west seems to be sky working from what is the whole wheel in north-south direction of all the realms together, forming the whole astrological wheel. What is the influence of all the energies, where Earth is the focal point of. And then in a sense of, in six-dimensional sense, from top down, that we are actually precisely in the center of it. I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not just a 5-minute piece of work. Series has been doing this since October last year, and
Yes,
what
I can believe that. Yeah,
it's a
very
spiritual
complicated.
realm we live in, and it's multi-dimensional, and some people find that hard to come to grips with, but we are. I mean, we're multi-dimensional in our bodies.
I do believe that we are spiritual beings, and you know, I've got my own thoughts on that, and yeah, I can accept that.
In a sense, in this drawing, you see these curved line at the edges going up.
Yeah.
These are kind of the realms in between, and the Earth is exactly in the middle here. And I've mirrored the circle, and that you have a kind of double snake working here in one half going upwards and the other one the other way upwards. And then the interference pattern where the Earth is. And then above you have the heavens, and below you have also the heavens, but probably the opposite in kind of the hell.
Do you believe in the
That
creator
together,
as well?
Yeah, it's in the creator, as the creator. What is? That's it. Eventually, this whole thing builds up to actually a 7 chakra system. And it connects a bit with the 7 snakes behind and above the head of Buddha. In the 7 heavens above. That's it. And then you have the earth here, and then the heavens here, and the earth here, and the earth here, and the earth here. And then the heavens below again. And then we are in the middle of the bigger tree of life, in the middle garden. And then in our own tree of life, what is the earth itself, also in the middle square of the 3 squares you actually need to build this tree of life pattern. And the tree of life pattern itself is actually based on the latitudinal grid, and the land is based on the longitude. The land is based on the latitude, and the sky is based on the longitude in the direction of the grid. The flower of life grid, you can turn a quarter in where the pattern actually twists, because the side where if the east-west needs only 1 square to repeat, and the north-south direction actually needs the complete fifth-dimensional loop to end up in itself as a spatial loop. In the same sense that the 4D is in east-west, just a single square that what we can travel.
I hope everybody got that in the chat room.
Anthony, are you still on the chat there?
I certainly am.
Yeah, he is.
While everybody's chatting here, I was trying to set up a globe model to replicate that eclipse on August the 21st coming across the States.
I've got you on screen select so I can see what your screen is, and it's not moved for a while, but I'm guessing that you're working off that particular window that's shared.
Yeah, so that blue line traveling from California down in towards Florida there is the actual eclipse map for that path, according to NASA. I downloaded their map and superimposed it onto a globe model, and I got the moon set up to cast a shadow with the sun. So I wanted to see what they're saying is actually true. So if I rotate, the only way I can make that moon cast that shadow, which is starting in California, and make it travel west to east, is by rotating both the moon and the Earth at the same time, and keep the moon stationary, like locked into the Earth, which we know doesn't happen. See how that shadow, right?
So at this point, are you suggesting it might be a gap in the heliocentric model?
It's definitely, yeah, that wouldn't work. The way they're trying to say it would work can't work, because the only way I can make it do it is to keep the moon locked and then rotate it relative to the light source. If I take the Earth on its own and keep the moon stationary, which is supposed to be relatively stationary because it only has the 28-day cycle, right? So the Earth spins faster than the moon. So if I take the moon, or take the Earth and spin it by itself on a daytime, right, and rotate it east to west, well, then the shadow goes the opposite direction, right? See, it would have to actually start in New York and go the opposite direction if you spin the Earth east to west.
Is it correct to also say that you would achieve the same result if the moon if the moon traveled faster than the rotation of the Earth? Would it do the same thing?
Well, I'd have to move the moon. Let's see, if you move the moon relative
Quicker than the rotation of the
you
Earth.
have to moon, yeah, quicker, yeah. So you could do it if you started the moon shadow. It would have to be actually going backwards. You'd have to start the moon on the west shadow, and then rotate it going west to east relative to the sun faster than the Earth is spinning. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, right. So the reality
I can't see how they can make that work. So
Billy, can I just ask you something? Is the screen in the chat, is it blank? Because someone's saying it's blank.
Yes, you're going to have to represent. You're just showing your triquetra, your icon.
Yeah, sorry, Chris, you've got to represent yourself.
no.
He has.
Yeah.
It's been a problem lately, this, isn't it, Chris? Poor Chris has to put it up every single time.
Yeah, I'll try and do it a different way here. I'll just share the entire screen and then quickly move that. Maybe that'll work a bit better.
Okay, mine's a bit slow. Just refresh the page. Billy?
Yes, it's visible.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, so if I position the moon such that the shadow starts, and I'll let it render for a second, such that the shadow starts back up where they say it's supposed to start in California area, roughly. And then in order for that shadow to go from California down towards Florida on that blue line, the only way to do it is to rotate the moon from west to east direction, right?
Yeah.
Or you have to rotate both the moon and the Earth at the same time if I select them both, rotate on the Z relative to the light source, which we know doesn't happen in reality, right? Because the Earth is supposed to be spinning faster than the moon.
Well, I don't know that we don't know that doesn't happen in reality, because that's what we're told. We're all stupid, aren't we? We don't know anything.
Well, according to so if I put the shadow of the moon in New York, well, let's see. Okay, here I'll put the shadow of the moon where it's supposed to start. Okay, and in reality, the moon has a 27.5 day cycle, and you see there.
Is it me, or is this not coming through very well on the representation?
It's still rendering, Chris.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, nearly there.
Yeah, so the shadow, you can kind of see it. It's a very faint shadow because it's on an angle actually. So it would actually be in California. And if I rotate the Earth the way it's supposed to from east to west, then the shadow goes the wrong direction, right? The only way to make it go, I'd have to rotate the Earth from a west to east direction to make the shadow go from California to New York, which is backwards.
So there appear to be a hole in the system, right?
That's a hole in the system, yeah, for sure. I can't see any other way to make it work. Yeah.
Can I just say one thing without sounding horrible? Someone is typing away in the background. Who is it? Own up.
It's me.
It's not Arwyn. It's you, Anthony. Yeah, it's not Patricia. I thought it was Siri.
Oh, I know why. It's because I've got the mic on the wrong setting. Let me change the setting on the mic.
Oh, shame on the life of Riley.
Right, you won't hear it now.
If people aren't familiar with who The Life of Riley was, it was a television sitcom in the United States where this gentleman lived off his parents and just mooched, and so hence the phrase Life of Riley, a carefree life with no economical drive or anything like that. Everything is just handed to you. So
yeah, and it was just to stick two fingers.
Is that what it is then, Anthony?
It was just.
Is that what it is for you?
Yeah, it's just to stick two fingers up at the trolls, because I have loads of trolls, really bad.
That's not start coming.
Say again?
I said, don't say that. Oh, who said that? Charles.
No, me. I have that many.
Oh, yeah, don't say that, or they'll start coming in the chat room.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't think they will, because they don't know I frequent in here.
Okay.
So I agree. Based on just a quick investigation, I agree. That's a hole in the model, and the only way to make that shadow work is definitely.
It almost seems to me that you need to be watching everything all the time, and then if we actually were watching everything all the time, just like Chris has done with that model, if we're all sort of working out, we'd all know that nothing matched up. But we just go, they just show you some pictures, and you go, oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah, there is a lot of inconsistencies with the model, but for them, if we watched every single point critically, I mean, they make that much. That, I mean, 9 out of 10 of them would probably work. But that every now and again, you get that one little nugget that really makes sense, and it's like.
Has anybody ever seen a shadow do anything but diffuse when you shine a light on an object? Have you ever seen a shadow focus to a pinpoint focus in your life? Right? No. So I mean, there's no way that the moon could cast that small shadow in the first place. The only way you can do it is by moving the moon so close to the Earth, and that's what I had to do to make this thing work. I had to drag it in within, 10,000 kilometers of the Earth to even get a shadow to appear on a ball, right? Relative to a light source, it just doesn't work. You can do that in your bedroom with a flashlight and a basketball, right? Or a ping pong ball and a basketball. Take a or golf ball and a basketball in your bedroom in the dark and a flashlight, and see what it takes to make it work. As you move the ball away from the small ball, away from the bigger ball, the shadow expands. I mean, that's the way it works. Right?
I've said this quite often, but I went to work one day and I got there and the moon was outside when I worked. An hour and a half later, the moon had gone. But I had to drive 7 miles before I saw the moon again. If I had to drive 7 miles to see the moon, how could anybody else, like London, or how could anybody else see it if I had to drive 7 miles to see it? That was a question, Chris.
I thought it was rhetorical.
Well, I was just like, I was one, oh, he's back in 5 minutes. So anybody else got ideas on that? If I had to drive 7 miles to see it, how could someone 20, 30 miles away see it?
Don't know.
Don't you?
Did you pay attention as you were traveling to its position?
Yeah, what it was is at work, it's slightly hilly, but not big hills, just little hills.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I actually came to the sort of brow of that hill to drive down into Thatcham where I live, the moon was in the valley below me down there. It was in front of me there going across like to Wiltshire. And I just thought, it was only an hour and a half ago it was with me. An hour and a half later, 7 miles I had to drive to see it.
So you were looking slightly downhill at the latter case?
Well, when I got to see it, I actually drove over the top of the hill and there it was in front of me. Like you get the sunspot, I could see the moon spot on the land below. I could see it shining on the land below. But I just thought,
you didn't see it at all before that. But you were traveling towards it, and before that, did you see it before that, or wasn't it visible at all?
No.
Okay, so you don't really know, like, where it was traveling at the time.
Well, when I started monitoring it myself last year, sometimes even the sun, it all comes in slow, goes off fast, comes in fast, goes off slow, comes in slow. It's never the same. Sometimes these things are coming in fast, taking ages to go across and then moving off. Sometimes it comes in really fast and then goes off really fast. The moon, this is, and things. That's just my monitoring last year. The moon is not going the same speed every day. It's doing different speeds. I think the sun does as well, depending on where it's coming up. But I was just a bit shocked that I had to drive 7 miles. Like, well, that must be pretty small then. In an hour and a half, it was there outside when I went into work. An hour and a half later, I had to drive 7 miles to see it again. I mean, all flat earthers, when you wake up, suddenly the whole world's a different place. You start looking at things, maybe before us girlies would go shopping, and now we just look up and out. Everything is different. We're always, look at that, did you see that? We're monitoring differently. You weren't looking at these things before, but now you look at everything differently.
You do look at everything differently, totally differently. You look at things and go, ooh, that doesn't look like it conforms with heliocentricity. And then you think about it and you think, oh, maybe it does. But then you think also maybe it doesn't. And you end up getting a position where you start actually thinking about the world in which we live. And it gets to the point where either your partner or your best mates or your work colleagues or whatever, you end up bouncing ideas off them and just saying, does that look right to you, that? And then they come back and say, yeah, it looks fine. And then you say, well, what about blah, 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 blah. And they just look at you to say, so what? And it's like, no, come on, think about it. And they just don't. But you're always thinking now. It's like once they show the rover's return, once you see that fourth wall at rover's returns set, and you realise it's not really a pub.
I can't get through the day without thinking. I can't get through the day without looking up in the sky.
Yeah.
I'm looking for anomalies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other one, there's another anomaly too. That's the sunspot, the spot on the sun that actually moves for greater than a quarter turn within 6 hours. If you track the sunspot on the sun, you'll actually, a friend of mine took pictures of it through his telescope and it traveled greater than a quarter turn within 6 hours. He took a picture every hour for 6 hours. And the sunspot went from the north to almost to the, I think it was from 11 o'clock high to about 7 or 8 o'clock.
Would you be able to model that on the heliocentric model in terms of how that can even happen? Because I don't think that can happen with regards to the spin of the Earth, the tilt of the Earth in relation to the sun. I don't think that can even happen.
No, it can't. Not that I can think of. Right? I can't do that, no.
And it makes sense on a flat plane because if the sun was stationary in regards to its rotation, it wasn't rotating at all. But from our perspective, as it passes round us in its arc motion that we see, if it's stationary, but it's our perspective's changing like throughout the whole day, that would kind of give. Yeah. That I actually think it's one of the biggest proofs of a flat plane that we can have. The sun does exactly what it, and it can't do it on the heliocentric model at all.
Right.
I just want to put a question out then to the chat room. How many of the chat room every day start looking out or up or going, what's that? That doesn't look right. I'm going to take a picture of that. Just how many in the chat room, maybe that weren't doing it a few years ago when we weren't thinking like we do now? It's just asking that question for the chat room. We'll have to wait for them to catch up.
Yeah, shout out to Ranty Rant in chat.
When I go to bed in an evening and my wife will be fast asleep and I'm at the window looking up at the sky.
Yeah.
I'm there for an hour. Just,
Watching the moon do stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then everybody thinks you're crazy.
Yes. Yes.
And the other thing
I
that
live
I
in the
do,
countryside, so nobody can see me.
the other thing I do is I always look for Betelgeuse or Sirius, and I spot it in relation to the moon, and I think, right, so the moon should be there at 9 o'clock, and then I look out at 9 o'clock, and there it is. It's exactly where I expected it to be. The sky's rotated 1 degree, and the moon has moved a little tiny bit as well. And every night you can watch it move around, and it's quite cool. It's quite cool.
It is, yeah.
The chat room is saying, yes, they do it too. All in the chat room are coming through now saying, yeah, we do.
Yeah, it's so typical because all the globe heads, basically, they always depend on this visualization of looking from another angle on the sun and the planet spinning around. It's so amazing. But as flat earther, you always start to basically try to approach everything just from what you get to see. And that's what we base our models after. And they're always dependent on this third person perspective systems and a bunch of marbles. Just want to point that out.
Just a show of hands, how many people use Twitter?
I don't.
Any on
I
the
don't
panel?
even have a mobile phone.
Nope.
I haven't got a mobile phone.
What's the significance of that then?
Well, let me just put it out to chat. Just anybody that uses Twitter in chat, just say yeah, so I know that roughly how many people use it. Because I don't know how many people use Twitter, and I've never used it until like the last 24, 48 hours I've set up an account for it. Simply because...
Ranty says yes. Ranty Rant says me. Realm of Fire says no. Brandon says no.
So Universe does, Ranty does.
Because it's Twitter.
Universe does. Right, guys. What I'll do is I'll put in chat my my Twitter thing because I just want you to add for me because A, I've only just done it, and B, I'm testing out this new bit of hardware that I've got. And the idea, what it does is with the press of a button, I can do a tweet without having to like log into it and then type the message, then press send, then log back out again. I can do it with the touch of a button. And I can say pretty much the same message anytime I want. And what I'll do is if it works the way, well, it appears to work, but I want to know that people can actually see it and acknowledge that it does work. So what I can do on this hardware is literally set a button up so that when I come into the chats in the rooms wherever I frequent, I can just tell Twitter that that's where I am. And then people think, oh, right, even if they can't speak to me in chat or whatever, if they know that certain people are broadcasting, like, for example, IPS or Jamie Brown, they'll know then that Sun and Moon Group's live. And I happen to be in there if they don't get the notify, because I noticed that notifies are not working like they used to on YouTube anymore. Have you come across that?
Yeah, much later. Too late sometimes.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know what. Yeah, sometimes it's like 3 hours late, and it's like, what? And sometimes I don't even get it at all. So what I'll do, for those that use Twitter, if you wouldn't mind just adding me onto Twitter, and then I'll tweet now with the touch of a button just to see that it actually works. And then if it does work, then I'll actually start using it because it's just a feature that I've not had before, and I may as well use if it's there. So I'm going to tweet my thing on now. So the tweet is this. So I think, don't you do it as at? Oh yeah, I'll do it as at, and then it's the life. I couldn't get of Riley. You have to get the 3 instead of the E because somebody already had Life of Riley, so I made the 3 into an E. But if you guys can just add me on that, then I'll set up a tweet link, and then I'll do it now while I'm on the thing, and then if someone can just let me know that they've seen it, so I know that it actually works. It just means that when I come into this chat, I'll press the button and I'll tweet to people and then just say that this is where I am because I'm just trying to interact on more platforms than just Facebook. Because to be honest, I hate Facebook. It's getting on my tits. Everyone's asleep. No one listens on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I'll just put in sun and moon as the name of the icon for me. Now I need a suitable comment. So I'll just say, join me in chat with Karen and Co. See, and that will be the tweet. I'm doing this literally right now. But I just need a picture that I can stick on it so that the icon is personalized. So let's find a suitable comment, a suitable picture. So I could probably get a picture. I'll go with that one. Karen, do you change your picture a lot? Karen?
Sorry, I'm here. Sorry, someone just rang me, so I have to whip to the phone. What's this? What do you want?
Do you
Picture.
change your your main picture, that the sun behind the clouds? Do you ever change that, or is it always the same?
Same at the moment.
Right, just keep that like that for a few weeks while I get used to it, and then I'll recognize it. But if I now save that, that gives me the icon. So when I go into this Twitter links, which will be here, and then click on sun and moon, add this little picture to it, I should then be able to just tweet at the press of a button, and it should work. So, right, I'm ready to tweet this. So if a couple of people just add me so that I know that this works, because obviously I've not got anyone added at the minute because I've only just done it.
I've never really got into Twitter, although
No.
I did have a Twitter account for eBay, but I've never really got into.
Anthony's just got some new toys and he's showing them off. That's all.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm just playing with toys. Right, so I now have 5 followers. So I have, as a result of that, I have Critical Thinker, John, Plenum Terry, and Yogi Bear. So if any of them 4, let me know, and I'm just gonna do a big countdown because it's gonna be theatrical. It's gonna be impressive. I'm gonna be impressed with this because this should work, right? So I'm gonna literally do it now and press a button, and I'm not gonna type it out. Let's make sure I get a tick box. Right, a tick box. So the tweet should have gone out just now, and then just in chat, somebody let me know that they can see it. And did they get like a notify? Did they get like a notify thing to say that they'd seen it? Or did you have to look it up? Now I actually see it. Do I see it on my? Yes, I got a notify on my homepage, replying to like, all right, okay, so you've been replying to. Has that done it already? Maybe not. Let's just see on my homepage. Does it show?
What's Chris showing us? Chris is showing us something right now.
Oh, just to recap on the sunspot thing, there was a friend of mine who's on my Facebook there, Anderson Neves. He's from Brazil. He takes some amazing pictures. And this was from the 7th month. So I guess that's the 16th of this month. So these are fresh pictures. And what he did is he took 6 pictures in series, 1 every hour, roughly. And you can see the sunspot starts around 11 o'clock, well, 10:30, 11 o'clock on the sun. And then each hour he took another picture, and you can see the spot will rotate with each picture until you end up at 1422 hours. So in order for that to happen, there's no way I can figure that you could actually model that using any sort of a heliocentric type of model relative to our perspective from where he is on the ground with a telescope. Yeah, and those are real life pictures, right? The only conjecture I could think of would be anisotropic light going past where we are and going backwards towards the sun and creating some sort of a spot from orbital bodies in a plasma field, but that's pure conjecture, right? But what's causing that sunspot to move relative to where he is in South America? He's in Brazil, I guess. Yeah, from Brazil. That shouldn't happen in a heliocentric model, that I can tell.
It's an interesting observation. I don't know who spotted it, because it's not easy spotting the gaps, but once you spot them, they're blatantly obvious. But on this one, it's not that obvious because it's difficult to verify whether it is actually a hole. Because obviously the good one that we all noticed and are aware of is the application of sidereal day to explain why it is that the Earth's not in a 180-degree different orientation every 6 months. In other words, it always gets the sun. And they come up with sidereal day to explain it. And I think that's a complete bullshit answer designed literally to fool us.
Yeah, sidereal, yeah. It makes no sense, no.
Well, it makes sense in terms of it does explain away why we wouldn't be in the other position, but it also makes no sense in terms of you're doing it simply to explain the reason why the Earth will be in the other position, because it wasn't mentioned before then. Nobody had heard of sidereal day, really. It wasn't common knowledge, I don't think, but maybe it was common knowledge, but it just seems to be convenient that there happens to be this sidereal day, and it's like, is that really true?
Yeah, isn't that sunspot supposed to be there year round, observable year round? Same spot, always in the same place, essentially.
Yeah, I think so.
So then, if we're going, if we were in a solar system going around it, then there would be a certain portion of the year that wouldn't be visible at all, right? And every day you would see it, spinning relative to our rotation. Right? I can't figure out any way that make that what he's captured there in pictures work, as far as I can tell, even in sidereal. Right? I can't figure it out. So it's another hole, I think, another gap in the process.
So we've learned something tonight, then.
Can I ask you something, Chris? What happens when you see pictures of the sun and there's a couple of dark spots on the sun? Is it the same thing?
Well, from what I know about the sun, I mean that there's one spot that's supposed to be constant, and the others kind of come and go depending on what they call what's the word I'm looking for? You guys know what I'm talking about?
The meander minimum.
No, the plasma discharge of the sun. They call it some sort of an event, right? It's a CME. So
Carrington event.
A CME, coronal mass discharge. Yeah,
coronal mass ejection.
Ejection. Yeah. So, yeah, but that's conjecture.
That's just the arcing in the flares.
Yeah. I mean, this is a full frame shot. I mean, he's zoomed in, 100%. He's got a full frame shot with a Nikon P900. I mean, that's a full frame shot, right? So, yeah. And it's billions of miles away. Yeah, sure. Yeah. It just defies logic. That's all I know.
It's only 93 million.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a full frame shot with the P900. Yeah. It's amazing. That's a heck of a camera. Yeah. He's got so much detail in that shot, you can zoom in on it at the spot and actually see it's flaring like a little bug, right? It's got polarity to it, whatever is causing it. It's got polarity.
Did they not also say that the moon and the sun, even though one's 238,000 miles, one's 93 million miles, supposedly, are they both the same size up in the night sky, up in the sky, relative to us?
It's not.
Are they not supposed to be the same size?
Very pixelated, actually.
And that's why the argument of gosh, I'm forgetting the word. Bear with me.
I'm not sure. Arwijn, do you know the calculation for pixelation? I'm not. You know how to work that out?
This spot is 8 pixels wide.
Yeah.
So you know.
Yeah. So do you know the calculation for pixelation to figure out distance?
That's why they say we have perfect.
You just said it was extremely detailed, but this doesn't look very detailed to me. That's it.
No, but do you know the calculation for pixelation based on the focal length to figure out how big that object actually would be, or where the focal point would be? There's a friend of mine that could tell me what it is. But
I think that with just direct photography, shouldn't be too hard to have a non-pixelated, extremely zoomed in close-up picture. Somehow you just need to protect from the overexposure of light somehow, dim that off. Could get a very detailed picture, I think, with modern photography.
Yeah, I'll have to check with one of my amateur astronomer friends there, because
photographing the actual spot itself.
Well, we were
That would have been interesting because it's 8 pixels wide. Come on.
Yeah.
It's not very impressive like this. If you imagine the sun to be gigantic, then yes, it would be big, but we don't. There's no confirmation that it's that big at all. That's heliocentrism, basically.
I had a friend, we were looking at a similar type of problem where he was taking video footage of the moon, and you can tell the difference between like a bug that flies in between you and the object, or a duck that flies 10 kilometers away. He had a way to calculate the pixelation between the two objects and tell which one was a bug and which one was a duck and which one was an airplane. But depending on the distance and the pixels, like an airplane could be 8 pixels wide at 40 kilometers, and a duck is 8 pixels wide at 4 kilometers. But both objects are at different distances. So I was wondering if anybody knew the calculation.
I don't know, because surely that calculation doesn't exist, because if that was the case, we'd be able to work out the distance of the sun and the moon, right?
Well, that's kind of what I'm wondering, right? Is it possible? I don't know. Or what?
If it's a physical object with that size at that distance, then eventually some kind of lens would be created to overcome that distance, because even we can overcome perspective obstacles, literal obstacles that we get to see at the horizon by having more sophisticated technology, better lenses to get a closer look. Then you get more detail. So if you just use a really good lens and the sun really is that big, then you would be easily have a super high resolution real picture of the sun, and you could get all these details in.
So do you think it's a change in distance or just a change in resolution relative to where the sun appears on the medium that we're looking at?
That thing, I don't know.
Well,
what it is.
anything like any like if you compare,
It doesn't look like the sun to me.
micro,
I don't know what it is. I think probably just CGI'd it or something.
No, that's a friend of Chris's.
I don't know his friends. I have no idea who they are.
Yeah, but that's not the first time that people have taken photographs with that black spot on the sun, is it? That spot comes up quite often.
Okay. Well, yeah, well, I don't want to insult anyone. I probably just did. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. It does come up quite often, that spot, though.
No, it could be,
On
but
the
it's something. Like, there's all kinds of visual phenomena, especially with the sun and the moon, that are very fascinating. Like, for example, the ripple on the moon and all that stuff. There's all these phenomena with these holographic skies. But it doesn't mean that the sunspots are literally like these giant holes in the surface of a giant fiery globe. It just means like, hey, look, you can see these spots. They're spots. That's why they're called sunspots. And the rest is speculation. You don't know what they are.
I've seen quite a few that say that basically when that spot is one side, but when it gets to the zenith, it goes across to the other side as if it's flipped. But I don't know whether Chris would agree with that, but that's what I've seen.
Definitely, It could move. Why not? We don't know what the sun is, what that thing really is. Even in a reflected state, it's still a mystery.
Well, Chris believes that the moon is semi-solid and half metal, but the sun is probably a liquid. Is that right, Chris?
Sounds very mystical to me, really.
Well, from what I've seen with PhD Professor Pierre Robitaille's work on the sun and the emissions of the radiation coming from it, it has a signature of hydrogen and oxygen, and similar to water. Yes. So he, in his thesis, he proposes that it's a water-based phenomenon, and that the moon is metal. Right? It's the opposite dielectric. Yep, that is what I believe. Yep, from the physics and magnetics and electrical side of it. Yeah. The sun being a plasma ball, it's a plasma energy phenomenon.
But we're only seeing a rendering of it, aren't we?
would be
Well, where it appears is relative.
close someday.
Yeah.
Like from an actual physical close-up position, because yeah, if it's really like that, that's fascinating. But there's no clue that there's really any literal physical object out there, because it's all relative. It's non-triangulatable. It's holographic. So to assume that it's physical, it seems just one step too far for me.
It's all atom.
Sorry, series?
Apparently, everything is atom.
A tune?
Atom, atom. What I'm
Atom.
showing here. That
Yeah, that's Santos Bonacci's
what-
great
what I
catchphrase,
see
by the way.
kind of Russian doll in a Russian doll, but with the atom as a base principle, and then this 7 chakra system as the body in between them. And then you have the next atom level and then the next body. It's a switch between the two, it seems. Upwards, downwards, inwards, outwards. In all directions, like the whole fruit of life is building in all directions. Still within the dimensions, but in hyperdimensional sense as well.
Unity in chat says, when the sun comes through the clouds on a hot day, you feel it. So surely it's real. It's physical.
Well, the heat you experience is real, but doesn't mean that it's basically the sunlight or the light of day hitting you, and that's what warms you up.
When you think that a few miles up Everest, it's freezing cold, because obviously that's nearer to the sun, we actually live in a really small corridor of life. Well, that's what I could see. You know, it's not like you can live up and you feel it looks like this. If you were 20 miles up, it'd be freezing. So we live in a very small corridor of life. When that sun goes across, like through a magnifying glass across, we live in this small field of life. That's what I think, anyway.
It is fine-tuned to a life, definitely. It's been designed that way.
It has been designed. That's what I believe.
Like a greenhouse.
Among things. Just very diverse conditions centered around, viability for life to thrive. There's a lot of surface on the earth where life can thrive in all kinds of ways, so that then you would come to the conclusion that it's been designed for that purpose. Otherwise, well, there would be a lot of more void regions where there's no life at all. And there's only very little. Even in the most hostile looking deserts, you can find a diverse spectra of life that seem to adapt.
I wonder what it looked like before the flood then.
Oh, very different.
Drier.
So it still managed to survive after the flood. I wonder what we looked like before the flood. I mean, looking at land, you know, England is sitting on a great big plain of land that's under the water now, but we would have been a much bigger piece of land.
Well, it might be. They say, a lot of people say it's a different interpretation, but they say that the lands were divided after the days of Peleg, who was the son of Nimrod. So that would be after the Tower of Babel and after the flood.
I think the surface probably looked mostly the same, but there's a giant amount of water raging through everywhere. There's going to be a lot of direct deterioration when it settles down.
This looks like there would have been more land.
A lot of drag. Yeah, there would probably be swaths of land everywhere. Might have been more land than ocean surface originally and just washed away. And mountains that would have been very strong would have been basically dragged out, like cut down because of the drag marks from the sea.
I'm just asking, Chris, with all those arkings you were showing us, that all happened at the same time. So when they've got these massive arkings happening all over the earth, amen.
Sorry, Karen, you broke up there at the end. I didn't catch you.
I always break up when I ask you a question. I was saying, when all those arkings happened, that's when the flooding happened.
I think during one of those events, yeah, but there's been definitely more than one of those types of events, and I think they've in the further back you go, the worse they were. Like they've actually kind of gotten less extreme as time has progressed. Yeah. Okay. Early on, I think there's like the Pangea type of idea where the lands were closer together, and then you had the four rivers, and eventually things were pushed apart over time, and then those events cyclically got less and less and less until today when they're not as extreme. I think the last one wasn't that long ago, right? From what I can tell.
What, about 500 years?
Middle Ages, yeah. There's some pretty strong evidence there was some pretty nasty stuff that went on during the Middle Ages with the falling spheres, and that event wasn't that long ago.
So it might have meant that they didn't actually cover anything up. We were just coming out of chaos. And this is why all the books got destroyed and everything. This is why everything got destroyed.
Yeah, it's probably a bit of both, right? Yeah. The survivors that wanted to control things destroyed what they wanted and tried to rewrite it the way they wanted it and whatever. Yeah, there's all kinds of motivations for strange.
You think some of these things are much more natural, don't you? Whereas I got because I know Anthony's into pyramids, and I just can't get over how, in one sense, these wonderful things like emanating all this energy and creating energy and all that, and then there's this thing happening. I'm just wondering, you don't think the pyramids had anything to do with it then?
I think the pyramids were a remnant of a universal society that was dependent on the electricity, and then it died down. And then they built the pyramids probably to get some of it back, to create these electrical fields on which they were probably physically dependent. I think that the giants that were at the time, they were able to be that big because they were partially physically dependent on the electricity. And that's why they probably didn't need to nourish themselves with food as much, so they didn't have to eat everything. And then when the electricity storms, or the overall tension field died down, maybe due to storms, maybe just phased away, they built pyramids to reinforce it, to make it viable.
Chris was showing us some pictures yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before, about how they made the pyramids with the giants, and they were carrying the they actually sort of made the stones.
Are these the Nephilim?
Sorry, somebody's really ruffling around there with their microphone. Is that Anthony again?
That's Charles.
Why would you think it's
No,
the
is it the Nephilim?
Sorry.
Are we talking about the Nephilim?
Oh,
Giants,
with
men
the
of
giants?
renown.
The giants are said to be their descendants, at least.
Hey, Anthony, because it worked so well the first time, buddy, you might as well go for 2-0.
What's that?
You got blamed the first time. Might as well blame it for the second.
Sorry.
I did one little thing wrong. I had my microphone setting on wrong one, and that was it. And now I get blamed for everything.
Sorry, I just had someone ruffling around again. The whole hangout hears it, and the whole chat hears it. Charles, mute yourself.
Has anybody seen the pyramid in Bosnia?
Yeah, there's
The pyramid-shaped mountain, you mean?
Yeah.
There's no like they haven't really uncovered any distinguishable stone cutting. It's just a mountain that's perfectly shaped like a pyramid. So it could be a pyramid under there, but I haven't seen any direct proof that it's actually a building covered up by dirt. So
I think there's a lot of pyramids. I think there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pyramids.
well, there are a lot of pyramids that are just have been properly discovered as being such, even in the ocean. They're everywhere.
Most people don't know that at Silbury Hill, which is at Avebury, which is a stone circle, is a pyramid. It's called Silbury Hill, and down here we'll think of it as this mound of earth that they don't know. But about 10 years ago, they were excavating a bit, and they know it's a pyramid, and now it's a pyramid of the world. And yet nobody around here knows about it. It's a pyramid of the world.
They say they use giants to make these pyramids.
Yeah,
And
convinced that.
I've read about the skeletons being dug up in America, and the Smithsonian Museum hiding and getting rid of these skeletons. Does anybody know anything about this?
Yep. Yeah, Freemasons don't like giants. The museums, they try to cover them up or get rid of the skeletons, and they replace it with dinosaurs.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Dinosaurs are the giants, guys.
Sorry.
Rearrange them into dinosaurs.
No, I think that for they really just try to get rid of the bones before somebody does some research on it or something. So they just don't want any traces. They rather prefer to completely make from scratch a dinosaur skeleton, and maybe even use like normal creatures that are still around, like whales or whatever, for specific examples to be inspired on. But I think it's all made.
There's been some speculation that the Tower of Babel could have been a pyramid as well.
Anyway, Chris is showing us some pictures at the moment, aren't you, Chris, of giants?
Yeah.
But the Tower of Babel was built by Donald Trump.
That's the wall.
Oh,
That's the Great Wall of America. Well, not that great.
Yeah, I just pulling up some pictures
The
of
thing is, well,
some of the giants that, they're just pictures that would kind of lend one to believe that in the 1800s, I mean, there's
Yeah, but these are like the far descendants. It was well known that the Nephilim, if they created the giants, they did it by breeding with humans. So it's very likely that these offspring giants also bred with more humans and maybe with each other. So we should have all kinds of traces of their genetics mingled within us, within the giant pool of humanity. It's such a long time ago, so many cycles.
Yeah, we still get some people that, they carry the giant gene, and, there's, what's his name, Edward, he was still alive, even Andre the Giant, right? He's a famous wrestler. It's still within the genetic code buried.
Well, they were with us and they were part of us.
Yeah. And if you look at, you take these from the 1800s and then you go back to Egyptian hieroglyphs, and you can see that, obviously they were making paintings of these guys that were pushing the height of giraffes. Mm-hmm. So, I certainly don't deny that there was a lot of people that were very big people, and they're shown in the glyphs, and they're showing you how they built the pyramids. They poured them, right? There's the pouring operation right there, and there's a guy right there carrying 2 stone, which are 2,400 pounds each or whatever they are. They're huge.
Agreed.
Yeah, giants makes building those huge monuments a lot more convenient.
Yeah, but
it's like build it on the fly instead of like making it a super giant project that's just impossible. Just like, oh yeah, we're going to spend hundreds of years building this.
Yeah, but to be honest though, the giants lifting these rocks or whatever is still a disproportionate effort in terms of the size of the rocks, because even if you get to say 10 foot or 20 foot tall, the rocks still weigh like 2, 3, 5, 10, 12 tons. So it doesn't really matter how big the giants are. The rocks still ain't going to get lifted. The evidence
Well,
is that the
They
evidence is,
underestimate their strength. And I think that during the time that giants were alive, they had more strength in relation of their size towards like how big we are, because the atmosphere was a lot more electrically charged, and this was a direct nourishment, like supporting their strength and their ability to stay nourished without starving. And I think that also probably increased their strength because, well, that they're just big. So if you have this extra line of feeding instantly, then it's could be directly translated in strength. I think it was a big part of what the giants were. It was an electrified, stronger electricity in the entire world basically, and the pyramids added to that. Probably were like a replacement when it died down. Anyway, that's my thought about it.
if you look at the evidence, though, the Geopolymer Institute in France has confirmed that they are actually a compound. They were made. They were poured like concrete, and they can't recreate it because I believe that they're missing one part of it at least that gives it its binding power that makes it strong. And they can get almost all of it, but they can't get it complete.
What exactly?
The Geopolymer Institute in northwestern France, they've got documents on their website that clearly show that the limestones on the outer casing of the pyramids are a compound, and within the compound there is water, which proves that they were created, they were made by man, and they were poured like concrete. They're not.
Sorry, someone's heavy breathing. I think is it Billy? You've got your microphone up by your nose, Billy. Someone's heavy breathing.
Yeah, that's not me.
Sorry.
No, that's not me.
It's not you, Billy. Who
It's
is
probably
it?
me.
It's Arwyn.
I don't think it was Arwyn.
Okay, carry on. Sorry, Billy.
Hey, when all else fails, just blame Anthony.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, it's Anthony. It's Anthony's fault.
It could be that some of it was poured. They could have used another technique. I have this suspicion that in ancient times there was this technique to actually soften stone into like a putty-like clay, and then you could reharden it, probably using some type of sonic or magnetic technology involving the horns, because there's also places around the world, if you search for them carefully, where climbing grips have been made in solid rock surfaces. There's no other way to explain it, because the whole thing would be completely straight and there would be like improvised grips, like they were molded in like clay, were made. So I think there was just this technology to manipulate rock and manipulate it very easily like clay and then re-solidify it somehow.
I agree there was the technology to mine big miners. Rocks. There is evidence of that in where we are told that the rocks were mined from in the Giza pyramids, but they only mined the really, really big miners or the big obelisks. They didn't mine the casing stones. The casing stones weren't naturally formed. They're like I say, they're a compound. So yes, they did mine the really big lintels that were the supports for the doorways. And they did use a technique that we may not be familiar with, because that is the evidence. The evidence is there to prove that. Not how they did it, but that it was done. But that doesn't prove that. Sorry, but the point I was making was that the caps or the limestone casing stones were not mined in the same way. It was only the lintels that were mined this way.
Artis isn't here today. He's on holiday this week. Artis joins us, and he's really fascinated with the pyramids, and he's noticed that on a lot of the stones there are these sort of lumps, like bits sticking out, and he's trying to investigate what they are. They're on some of them. They're just on the stones themselves, and he'll show you picture after picture of these sort of round knob things sticking out of the stones itself.
Could be casting remnants.
I believe
I think that's what they used when they were building them up.
I believe I know what they are.
I wish he was here. What's that then?
It depends. I'd have to see the pictures that we're referring to, but there are these little dimple things in various parts of the pyramids, and it's to channel. Well, this is a debatable bit, but it's to channel the flow of power or power of electricity into a particular focal point so that they can control the flow of electricity throughout the pyramid. But whether it's the same in all of the stones, I don't know. But I do know that in the subterranean chambers and a couple of places through in the rest of the pyramid, they do have these dimples. Some of them are recessed, some of them are convexed. And I believe it's to do with localizing the power to a particular point so that it can be controlled. In this context, I don't know if it's the same application, but that's what I believe the dimples are for within the pyramids.
It's just when you see the size of those things, those structures and the statues. I mean, how did they build them without
They were
probably
poor.
cost a
size of them?
Aren't the biggest ones the stones of Lebanon, 300 tons or something?
Well, the biggest one is the White Pyramid in China, the Great White Pyramid.
Yeah, but that's the physical, the individual stones. Are they not the stones in Lebanon? If somebody can look that up.
Well,
Is it Jordan, you mean? Are you talking about Jordan?
Or Jordan, Lebanon.
I think it's Jordan.
I think
That they look like the
I
ones
thought it
that
was
Chris
Lebanon.
was just showing. The White Pyramid of China.
Yeah. I think it's called the Great White Pyramid of China, although I might be wrong.
No, that's it right there. Yep. Yeah, it's huge. Yeah.
In relative to the size of the Giza pyramids, it's kind of like 3 to 4 times bigger on its base. It's huge.
I was talking about the individual stones.
Yeah, the caps on the Giza pyramids. Or on the China
the
pyramid.
stone of South Lebanon. It's the forgotten stones of Baalbek, Lebanon. Just got it up. These things are absolutely huge. 1,242.
Can you screen share, Charles?
I don't know how
Charles,
to
do you know
that.
how to screen share?
No. Like I said, I haven't even got a mobile phone. But I've just got it now. If you look up the Forgotten Stones of Baalbek, Baalbek, Lebanon, and these stones are 1,242 tons.
Baal, Baal. Interesting name.
Baalbek,
Thanks, Chris.
BEK.
Chris is looking them up.
Yeah,
And
the Forgotten Stones of Baalbek.
We're getting feedback from somebody.
Probably
Yeah,
me,
there you
I'm
go.
rubbish.
Well, it's not Ceres, it's not Patricia, and it's not Arwyn. Let's stop
It's
now. There you
not
go.
Billy. It's not Billy
And it's not-
either.
It's not Billy. Yeah, there's pretty big structure, isn't it? I mean, look at that. God, look at the second one at the top on the right, or the third one. Look at that.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one because I've looked at this one as well. Obviously, you can see that the scale changed over time. So I mean, there was obviously a larger structure there to begin with, then a rebuild, and then another rebuild, and a final rebuild, and the actual culture changes as well. It goes from a square megalithic structure culture to smaller, and then you'll end up with Roman.
Well, yeah, the Romans are on the top.
Right, so Romans are on the top. Yeah, so then you get the Fertile. So this is where Roman. So it's definitely an empire change. Right, you can see the different.
How did they
construction
move
styles.
those stones at the bottom?
Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, nothing we got to not one piece.
I did read, yes, I did read that we can't move those stones today.
No, you can't. No, there's even Big Blue. Like when I was on site in northern Fort McMurray, I'll show you a picture of it. I'll just Google it. Big Blue crane. I got a personal picture of me standing beside this thing, but I'll have to find it for you later. But Big Blue. Big Blue is what we called it. Crane. Find a picture of it.
What does that lift?
We had one fall down. There's one of these that actually fell at Syncrude while I was up there. Very similar, but Big Blue was the biggest one on Earth at the time. find a good picture of it. Yeah, that's a pretty good picture. If I zoom in, so let's view that image.
All these stones are put
Well,
together.
One article
without any water.
is saying the impossibility of moving the stones at the great size of the tremendous weight appears to them to be proof of alien intervention. They did not do it with manpower, not with alien know-how, unlike
Are these the ones I found?
Yes, I'm reporting on the rocks, the stones of Belbeck. How did they move them?
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
some of them are saying alien. I don't know. I'm just saying.
And there's no mortar, is there? And you couldn't put a piece of paper between the stones. It's just incredible.
I would say Coral Castle.
Yeah, I do know there's not a crane. There's not a crane in existence that could lift one of those in one shot. Yeah.
No.
I wonder if they use some sort of magnetism or something. I don't know.
Or levitation.
Yes.
Because they were tapping into all these things that it's almost like it's been erased out of our memory and how to use our senses, the whole thing. But maybe it was they levitated in there.
Yeah, that's the excuse NASA use when they can't find how to get back to the moon. All the evidence has disappeared.
Well, when Matt was on last night, we had a hangout with Matt. He was trying to say that what they do is, when not now, but over 1,000 years, when they dispersed the people, they caused wars, the people dispersed, the parents were killed, the children then grow up somewhere else and they don't ever remember their roots. And this is how they change the history, because the next generation have no memory of what happened before. And so this might be what they've done to us.
They're saying it could possibly be that the Romans moved water in there, and they moved the stones underwater. That's just one article. I'll post a link.
Chris likes those things, don't you? The spheres, don't you, Chris?
Yeah, I love these are awesome. Yeah. Something else you won't see in the history books, right? It's,
I mean,
although there's hundreds of thousands of them laying around, nobody will ever talk about them.
Getting back to the stones, guys, the rectangles, not only moving them, it's actually cutting them. How did they cut them perfectly the way they did?
Well,
how did they
but if it were me today,
Yeah.
if it was me, yeah. If it was me today to try to replicate that, I would use high pressure water to cut them, and then I would probably dig out from underneath them. And as I dug out underneath the stone that I cut, I would slip these balls underneath, roll them underneath it, and then use these as ball bearings to drag them across the crown until I got them to where I wanted them. Other than that, I have no idea. That'd be my first attempt.
Ball bearings and water underneath.
Exactly. Yeah, you can try to lay yourself lay a road in front of you. Use these as ball bearings underneath the big rocks, and so you just dig out from underneath the big stone, place these underneath, get it up onto some sort of a platform, and just roll it along, using these as ball bearings, like you would, when we roll big equipment into places in plants. That's how you do it, right? You just slip it in through the side, and then use either pipe or ball bearings on the floor, and then roll it wherever you want. You can push it with a single finger. Right? You can take
I think you could push that.
like a 6 or 10 ton.
Well, here's one theory that wasn't alien.
Yeah, once you get a heavy if you take a steel plate, for example, you take a steel plate in the shop, and then you put a big heavy pump on it or whatever. You jack up one side of it. You just jack it up a little bit on one end, throw some, ball bearings underneath it. Jack up the other end, throw more ball bearings underneath it, and then you can push it around the shop with a single finger. Right, a child can move it, and it weighs 20 tons. It's just that's the way we do it in refining when you're moving big equipment into mines. Right? That'd be the
Chris,
first
do
way
you
I
know
would try to do
if
it.
any of those balls are anywhere near any of these method, you know, like the pyramids or anything, these buildings? Are these stones anywhere near them?
Oh yeah, they're everywhere. Yeah, they're in the deserts and they're all over the place.
What, by the pyramids?
It's not just Costa. Yeah, there's some in. You can Google them. You can find them in the deserts. I'm gonna have to look them up for you, but they're everywhere. Yeah, wherever there's basically a salt dielectric type of event, you'll find these balls around as well.
Well, it says in this one article that
They're
some
formed in the cloud.
believe that the monument was constructed of the Nephilim, the giants mentioned in Genesis, that were destroyed by the deluge, the flood. And some creationists believe this today. For those who don't believe in the supernatural of the Genesis, they may instead see the giants as somehow related to aliens. Here we go. Also related to the Bible, some believe that the structures were created by Nimrod, ordering the giants to build them in the one location. Others claim that the location of the Tower of Babel. Still others say that it was built by Adam's son, Cain, making this the oldest building in the world. And I posted the link in the Hangout for that article. It was very good information, Charles. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Made us think a little bit.
You can't argue with actual physical objects, can you?
Nope.
No, you can't. No.
But a lot of the old buildings look like they've
They're
been
big.
rebuilt on the top, don't they? They always look like they're added to, even the pyramids. To be some of the pyramids.
My house in England, for example, is 400 years old, and over the last 300 years, it's been added on, and you can see the different styles of brickwork and materials used. I mean, I know that's just to put it in modern terms, you know, to an analogy. So we've been doing this for centuries with buildings.
Yeah, I mean, the place gets destroyed, and those people flee for their lives, and then someone else moves in later, and then they just change it. So they adapt it to their own style.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And archaeologists don't like that, because Egypt is a huge tourism, right? So they lay claim to it, whether they're the original.
It enables archaeologists to date them better, though, when they've done that.
Yeah.
The really annoying thing is a lot of it's still buried, though, isn't it? A lot of the stuff which would probably tell us who and what we are is still buried.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
Well, it is, yeah.
Looking up at the stars and the planets and space, when really we should have been digging down. And I came across it. I can't remember its name, but it's more like a sandstone sort of palace. But underneath it, or next to it, was a granite palace. It was under the ground of today. Abs in there, next to this other palace. So that was built at an earlier stage and it's underground. I can't remember what the name was now. It's out in the Middle East somewhere.
The city's off the coast of Japan in the sea, isn't there? I don't know if you guys have seen those.
Yeah, there's even cities under the sea, isn't there?
All over the Mediterranean.
One thing I like to do in my spare time is when I'm researching this stuff is to go back and look for the pre-World War II stuff, like not only the drawings but the pictures. And you can see that if you go back and look at the historical in context and compare what you're seeing today at the same location compared to what was actually, there's a photograph in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And you can see that the head that's on this statue had a helmet on and a beard. This guy had the beard with the helmet on, right? And then you go look at the same place today, and it's completely different. So it's been recarved, right? it's been changed, because this is the same spot as this one here. Now he's got this on top of his head and it's been redone. So you compare this one with this one here, and you look at them and they were altered. So these were a different culture, more like the Titans, right? I see
There's
those
also
right.
In Egypt somewhere. There's also drawings on the wall of spaceships, isn't there?
Or that's what we
there's some
presume they
interesting
are.
glyphs.
Yeah, that's what. Yes, one looks like a helicopter. One looks like a saucer.
Yeah, that one I remember, the helicopter. But that's like, wow, what is that? It's amazing.
Exactly.
But just because it looks like one doesn't mean it is one. That's like looking at clouds. You can basically see any shape in it related to what you are used to, what you know. Doesn't mean that's actually that it was actually depicting that. So it could be another kind of contraption or device.
Well, that's what makes it so hard to date these things, is because they've been altered over time. Like you can see where they've intentionally knocked the heads off of all these statues. Now they're on the ground and they've turned them into planters. Right, so the head is now down here and been completely defaced. So you have no idea what the original, right? What the original was, and then some of them that had the Alexandrian times with the fleur-de-lis and so forth, and they've been knocked off and then altered to be more what we call modern Egyptian, right? But the original was more colossal with that's Roman style.
So do you think it's accidentally done? Do you think it's intentionally done? Or do you just think it was the people of the time intentionally did it? You know, with maybe they saw them as the baddies. Let's deface them. Let's chop their heads off. But I mean, even to get their heads off, they're still heavy stones, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, well, they work. There's
Leonardo
look at the
da
old
Vinci
pictures. They were working
painted.
at it for. Well, the old pictures show them working away at it with wheelbarrows back in the 1800s. I mean, they've been working on it for 200 years, right? So all these have been smoothed off and redone, and they're trying to prop them up and digging them out. Right.
Leonardo da Vinci painted a UFO in one of his pictures.
Yeah, I saw that.
But I believe that during the classic era, when the Roman Empire was still around, there were probably a lot. Well, not a lot, but there were probably still giants around. Enough for people to think like, oh yeah, the giants. And I think that before that there were a lot of giants, and they basically were a part of society earlier, and they probably had their own little empires. They might have become very hostile towards humanity, or the other way around. So seeing those beheaded stone giants there doesn't surprise me at all. It's typically something to humiliate them.
If you
And this is post.
Child, have a look for the Madonna and Child, the painting by Leonardo da Vinci, and you see in the background a UFO, and there's a chap looking with his hand over his eyes, looking up into the sky, looking at the UFO. Just search that, guys. Fantastic.
Yeah, I know the painting. It's amazing, but there's also this thing. Sorry to interject, but. Like I've been to, like, way before Flat Earth, I was into a lot of spiritual stuff, and it is said that there is like an astral traveling method that makes your spirit into kind of a UFO, like in a ball, and that's what that reminds me of. So I think that the painter originally just tried to add that knowledge. He probably saw it, or maybe even did that, and he wanted to add that to look like, yeah, you know, I've been through all these stages. I've did this to like emphasize the importance of the whole event. Like, yeah, I'm a spiritual master, maybe something like that. There's in the old paintings, the old, like when Christianity was still a mystery religion, all these people were experimenting with psychedelics a lot, and they really incorporated it in their knowledge and in their visions and everything, and in their paintings and artwork.
Well, again, something big had to have happened, isn't it? Because the pyramids would have been around water. and a lot of them are in deserts now. They needed the water.
It could be that some of the pyramids that we know were built afterward. I'm not sure. That a pyramid, because of
I mean, when you go back,
survive a lot of turbulence from water surrounding it. It's very evenly shaped. Maybe the corners would be dragged off a bit. I don't know. I think a pyramid as a solid structure could withstand like giant turbulence of running down water with mud and everything. I think they could stand that type of activity around them, at least partially.
Hmm.
And then later,
clearly,
it would
when
dry up, and then the sand would surround it basically as it was blown against it.
then when I look at it from just even the structural point of view, I mean, the amount of energy required to do that kind of damage, and these are the photographs from the 1800s again, this is 1870 white early photography, right? So I mean, they didn't start digging these things out until the late 1800s. And the amount of energy to do that kind of destruction, just to answer Karen's question, it's a bit of both. I mean, there was a natural destruction, whatever did that was huge. And then people came in after the fact, tried to fix it, and they adapted it to their local culture. If they were a different culture, moved into a different zone after the event. Right, so it's just a natural it's all at the same time. So there was a natural cause and then a reconstruction. They dug their way out of it. It was huge, right? So
yeah, when the world
whatever
was
did
destroyed, it was probably a lot more habited and a lot bigger structures. And then the flood destroyed all the ones that were not completely solid. It's very likely. Like we can even now see at the minor floods that happen around the world how much destruction on buildings they have really.
Yeah.
You think it wouldn't really have that much of an impact, but they tend to tear down everything eventually.
Yeah. The flood line water's there. I mean, you can see the flood line right there, right? That's where the water was halfway up those columns easy. And the guy's still standing in the water, and this is 1800s. I mean, so definitely a cyclical event.
Well, I can imagine that if there was a giant flood, all of a sudden everything would be filled up like very, very high, and then it would settle. There would be puddles remaining where the water would stand a lot longer until it dries up. So it would go down pretty suddenly, and then it would halt whenever when it forms a puddle, basically. And that, I think that would leave that type of mark, as you just saw.
Yeah. Here's a shot from 1914. The temple complex in 1914.
Amazing, those old photographs are fascinating always.
Guys, I'm going to step out for a bit. I want to go and catch up with IP. Oh, he's just gone offline. Bastard. Sorry. I wanted to catch up with IP.
Yeah, so the interesting part is, there was nothing around in 1914 that could have done that. So I mean, it's amazing.
It looks like it's been sort of covered with mud and stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So what did you want to do, Anthony?
I was going to step out, but I wanted to catch up with IPS before he went offline, but he's gone. It's all right. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're missing your favourite subject here, all around these buildings and pyramids.
Yeah. I'm more interested in the explanation for how they're there.
How what? The explanation of what?
For how
How did they get there? Yeah.
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 But I think
Don't we all want to know this?
I really like the concept that they just thinking about that in those times when these really huge buildings, or well, these stone buildings, purely stone buildings were made, they probably had a really good casting technique, because just think about casting in the modern world. You can make pretty amazing things with basic casting techniques. And just imagine that scaled up to a huge size and then being able to do it with stone like this. It would be a lot easier to do it. It would still be a lot of work because casting tends to be a lot of work to get it right because you have to get it right all at once, usually. But it makes it a lot easier than trying to carve it all out because that carving is like a terrible, complicated job. And if you do something wrong, then yeah, you can't restore it normally. So it's probably cast, most of it, I think.
Well, even the great big stones that you could, tons and tons of stone. You think that was cast?
Well, no, because it depends on the type of stone. Like stone with distinct patterns, like marble and everything, that have very specific structures. They can retrace them even by their structure to where they came from which type of mountain and everything. Those are probably not cast. You can't cast something like that with these intricate patterns. So those type of stones would be literally carved out and transported somehow. But as long as they don't bear these specific type of crystallized markings from their internal structure, then they could very easily be cast, if that's a widely available technique in those times.
All I know is that's one big Buddha.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I was showing this one. Yeah,
big Buddha.
it says there's we have to look at it from many perspectives. There's many ways to this one here is a great example of negative relief, right? The Buddha was carved into the mountain, and you can see where they had dwellings as they worked their way at it. They were living up in caves that they built as they went down and took the rubble elsewhere.
How long would it
it's,
take
it's
to
in
make that?
generations.
If
Yeah,
you
they mean,
cast
there's-
it could be done pretty quickly, I guess. They carved that all out. Well, they have to be master carvers, like a group of 100 people that dedicated their entire lives to it, and then they, over time, like a mining project combined with arts, they could get it like that in a lifetime. Maybe. It's such a big.
Yeah.
Wow. Look at those people below there. It's like,
Yeah, and
wow.
You can see up
So
above
huge.
at the Buddha's shoulders. I mean, there's dwellings where they were living in the caves that they built because they lived there and worked there on this one structure for multiple generations. You can see that there's layers of different layers as they worked their way down, and they've abandoned these, and then they carved the rest into the face.
That's
I think
exactly
the main
how the
Buddha
Great Wall of
probably
China
took.
was made. People living on site, and they say the bones of up to 1 million Chinese people are in the Great Wall of China because they just buried them where they died, within the wall.
Yeah, so you could think of each layer. This is a generation. This is a generation. This is a generation. I mean, whatever, right? They took a long time.
Well, the
Yeah.
funny thing about this huge statue is that it kind of does look carved out, because it's not cast perfect precision. It doesn't. It looks made. It doesn't look like it's like a perfect replica of something. So I would say that this is actually carved out. You see the difference with those other statues that just look really exactly like how humans look, like, or humanoid, however big they were. This looks typically cut out, like it was
Maybe
actually
that one's
man-made.
older.
Hmm?
Maybe this one's older.
Maybe, I don't know.
Like by the time we got to the other ones, they sort of were better at making them. I don't know.
Oh, that's assuming that it's the same type of culture that made them. This could be like a super primitive tribe. Like when they get together and they really set their mind on some religious thing, they can do incredible things over generations. Indeed, it takes like a generational effort. But I think it's a different type of style of, well, the more perfect looking super giant structures that are around the Middle East and northern of Africa and such, and Turkey. It's just a different style. It looks much more like those types of things were really cut or cast perfectly in some way, despite their deterioration. You still see the perfection in it. It's not the same type.
Yeah, we lost the presentation again in the live chat for some reason.
Oh. Chris,
Yeah, that's true.
what do you think of those then, Anthony? Those great big Buddhas?
I think that there's no logical explanation. They use technology that we don't yet have, or we do have, but is being suppressed.
Stored in the Vatican Library somewhere.
Yeah, they'll be in a library somewhere. You're quite right.
In the Vatican Library, that would
Yeah.
be. Thank you.
Maybe some really rich ass Freemasons or higher up have it in their locker. Like,
Who
I hear that the
destroyed
Vatican
Alexander?
Library is 5 miles long.
Yeah.
Who destroyed the Great Library of Alexandria?
nah, but that one is mythical. It's just a cover up to like make an excuse as how the knowledge was destroyed, which probably took a lot more effort, like spreading out of Jesuits around the world and everything. I think it was all concentrated in one library and then they just burned it down like that.
They know what they needed, and the rest burned it.
Now, once they get things done in their way, they can, once they really get done what they wanted and they reshaped the entire history of the world, they can just make up a mythical story to say why it all happened like that. And I think that's what the Library of Alexandria story is about. It's probably a cover
It's the
story.
great adage. The victors of war write the history books.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Once they win, once they really get the grasp of it, of exactly what they wanted, they can just make their story.
Yeah.
It's just so annoying, isn't it? It's all been kept from us.
Yeah. Well, we are reinventing much of it just by discovery and figuring it out. So,
This must be a brilliant time in a way, though, even if we haven't got there completely yet, about even understanding what the pyramids are. I mean, all those years everybody believed there were burial chambers. And in the last year, everybody's realizing that they weren't. They were generators, making electricity.
yeah.
I mean, it has moved on quite a lot.
I'm always a big proponent of the secrets in plain sight type of adage, right? They do have a habit of trying, basically having to tell you what they're doing, even though it's supposedly secret for some reason. It's the karma thing or whatever. But you just look at what's on the rover. It's an ultrasonic driller core, right? That's how it works. And it's a horn, a sound horn with a drill on the end, and it drills through solid rock in seconds. That's how it's done. Ultrasonic.
Well, with elite, they always have to tell you what they're going to do with you. But when it comes to covering up for their crimes, it's about, well, pretty much the creativity they can muster. So they can make up whatever story. And if it's incredible enough, they basically focus their story creation on making it as worthwhile to remember, as glorious as possible, so people fall in love with it and don't question it. That's how they design these cover stories.
We've got artists in the chat room. Artists, where are you? Say, are you at home or are you still away? Because artists is so into all this. Have to be talking about those things found on the stones. I don't know where Artist is though. I don't know if he's still on holiday. Might see if I can give him a link and he comes on for a little bit. Because Anthony would really like talking to him.
What's with the Mars robot? What is it?
I was just showing the technique that's used in secrets about Mars rover to use ultrasonics to drill holes in rock. Right? It's a step horn using ultrasonics to cut stone. So it's just sound cutting stone. Secrets in plain sight type of thing.
Well, that's funny. Yeah. Didn't get that one.
Yeah.
These people out there that have all this knowledge, they're not allowed to
Still on
really
holiday.
be honest about it. They love to drop hints just to prove like for future references, that they're really smart and they know it all, don't they?
Yeah, they put it out there in public in little bits and pieces, right? And you just gotta go digging for it, and you'll find it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the work, huh? The years of work of digging.
Well, you can you take a stone and you drill a hole down through one way using an ultrasonic drill. Then you drill in from the XY axis. You do the same thing, and you wrap a wire around it and start turning the wire, and it'll cut through the stone. And it doesn't take that long if you just keep adding water, as the powder comes off the stone, you keep adding a harder stone into the hole, and it drags the particulate with it. So you're using the stone to cut the stone. It's I've used that before myself.
Yeah, it's amazing ingenuity.
Yeah. So you can stand on the outside and turn the wheel, and then as you turn the wheel, you add powder to the hole, and the wire pulls the diamond powder grit through, and it cuts the granite stone because you're using a harder powder on a rope, essentially. And it's going to keep replacing the rope.
It's really bad though, isn't it, that they're still withholding all this information from us?
Yeah, I don't know why they keep it so secret, right? Or why it seems to be that way.
Because then
To keep you enslaved. That's why they kept it secret, because they would get you addicted to their energy system that you would have to buy, while covering up the real technology that we could have gotten and captured from the environment. This is why Nikola Tesla's technology was suppressed so heavily. They knew, who was it? J.P. Morgan. Tesla wanted to give it free energy when he was developing Wardenclyffe, and they found out that he was trying to send high voltage energy wirelessly. And if Morgan said, if I can't hook a meter to it, it's useless to me. So he didn't want that type of technology going out into the public, and they wanted us addicted onto the oil for the fiat currency, and they replaced the standard of gold in our country for currency and put it into paper, which is tied to the price of oil. That's the reason why. And which they control both.
Yeah.
Yep. Become economically.
Well, they've even covered up Tesla, haven't they? We've covered all him up and belittled him, and
yeah, they did it pretty early on.
I worked on a project one time. The way we cut the stone was we just drilled holes, like 3/8 holes down into it, about 4 feet deep, 5 feet deep maybe, and just drilled a line, and then we filled it with water, and then you plug the top of the holes with you just actually thread it, and then you wind a stainless steel bolt down through the hole to cap the water inside, and then just wait for it to freeze. And then when it freezes, the water pops the rock, because you just let the water do the work, because the ice will expand and just cracks the rock.
Nice.
It was a pretty big boulder. It was probably 10, 12 tons. It was just in the way, and we couldn't figure out how to move it. It was too heavy to move, so we just drilled holes in it, filled the water, cap the holes, and then let the ice do the work.
Yeah, it's really smart.
Yeah.
Really cool. Power of a bunch of water.
Use the water. Yeah, water expands like crazy. Like the power of ice, and when water transfers to ice, the tonnage is crazy. How much tonnage is in that?
Yeah, and just the remarkable ability of water, that if you actually make it cold, that it expands. It's a very unique property of water.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, pressure will cut. Yeah, it can cut under pressure, or it will cut if it expands. Yeah. I like water. It's holographic. Yeah. It's holographic too, right? Yeah.
And it has memory.
It has memory. Yeah.
Yes.
Victor Schauberger. I don't know if anybody on the panel is familiar with Victor Schauberger's work.
Spirals.
The name rings a bell. in a while.
Victor Schauberger. Yeah.
Is he German?
Yeah, he was German. Yeah. He's
Just
got
took a wild guess there.
Yeah, he's got a whole series of books. Well, I think there's 4 volumes, and it's just immense the amount of information, and it's all natural information. Self-taught engineer, just brilliant. So I recommend to anyone to look through his work. If you're into water, it's all about water.
He's Austrian.
Was it Austrian? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. From the Alps area. Then I know he was doing logging, right? He was moving logs through the mountains.
Yeah, it was a forest caretaker, it says.
Yeah, absolute genius. Yeah.
Can I just say that we have been going for 3 hours now, so I reckon we should just go for another 10, 20 minutes and then say goodnight to everybody, because obviously we're on quite regularly. So, yeah, if everybody doesn't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, just breaking up the conversation there, me. Sorry about that. It's just that, it's quite a long time when we're sitting on these hangouts regularly. Yeah, thank you very much for all you've shown today, Chris.
Is that a polite way of saying that your ass is getting sore because you sat in the same position for so long?
No, it's just that, like, we're on Hangout every night for at least 3 hours. Well, most nights. And then, people might stop listening in the chat room as well, because people get not bored exactly, but, everybody watches for only a certain period of time, don't they? Maybe they don't want us to go in the chat room.
Yeah, well, when you go into these like far realm and really complicated subjects, like people need time to recover. They need time to like let it sink in. So when it's all like a huge pile of 3 or 4 hours, then they're filled up at one point. They just can't take anymore. They step away. I have this.
But I'm sure
I never keep my hangouts longer than an hour unless it just keeps on going. But because
room like it as well, because it's somewhere to talk. You're freely able to talk about flat Earth and whatever, well, anything you want in, I suppose, in a sense, because sometimes the chat's about anything. But it's a place to be where we can all come together. And yeah, it's a good thing. I mean, I know there's other hangouts and stuff like that, but it's a place to come together. This is where we're put, isn't it, on YouTube?
Yeah, well, you made this. We made this.
Yeah, all the people made this. Every single person that's here today in the chat room, listening, on the panel, we all make this. We've come together. It's brilliant.
Look how far Flat Earth has come. How we're all now like on new roads beyond the basics. Like the basics are like second nature now. And we all have, based upon these basics, new assumptions, new directions that we take our thinking and what we want to explore, and we're figuring it out. And it's community. We're all looking. It's become second nature, these hangouts. Funny.
Just as they're pretty new people in our hangouts, Charles and Anthony, what are your families like about Flat Earth? Do they think you're crazy, or are they with you?
Absolutely crazy.
Although...
Yeah, absolutely crazy, me as well. I think I need to be carted off to the mental institution.
My dad ridicules it, yet he believes that the sun orbits the Earth, which, unless you're a geocentrist, can't happen on the heliocentric model. And he's also a heavy Christian, like heavy-going biblical, Pentecostal Christian. So
it's a tough combination. A Christian Glober, those are hard.
Yeah, and this is
those
what I
are
keep
very
saying.
tough.
Dad, listen, there's loads of references to the Earth being a flat plane in the Bible. Do you not realize that? And he's like, no, it doesn't. So when you show him, and it doesn't actually say the word flat, it says things like, well, it doesn't say flat, it says circle. He interprets that to mean like sphere. And I was like, come on, Dad, a circle is like a pizza. And he's like, no, it's not. And I was like, well, what's a pizza if it's not?
A circle is actually like a ring, but
it depends on whether you click fill or not. But in any event,
Yeah, it's not a globe. Definitely not a globe.
it's not a globe. And this is the point that he doesn't accept. And I'm like, Dad, you even said yourself that when you were in school, you were taught that the sun orbited the Earth, right? And that's what he said. And I think he's actually forgotten it and then thought that's what he was told. But I'm not entirely sure. But in any event, yeah, to answer the question, he does actually laugh.
It's not anybody's fault that they think it's a ball, though, isn't it? It's how we've been programmed.
Yeah, but once you realise, or once someone like drops that little mustard seed of doubt, to just laugh it off a bit.
It's that instantaneous. It's a click of a finger. You realise, click of a finger. I've said it many times before, like the Emperor's clothing, and suddenly there's just that click. That's it. As simple as that. All those years, you believe the ball. Click.
But still, this click, like this happens more often, and not everybody's always ready the moment the click happens. So there's a lot of people who just respond like, wait, no, everything's wrong. And they just like pull back and run away. Like I've had this several times during my life when I was confronted with flat earth, and it's like, what, space is not real? No, I'm out of here. Just go away. Just try to forget
Right,
it.
people get
And
frightened.
this happens to people too.
Bye-bye.
And a lot of the glober arguers that come back to us to argue the globe, they do this like instantly. They feel like something's going wrong. This is incoherent with their beliefs, and they just instantly forget it, and they just come back. Because I think that, yeah, it's really more a matter of getting over it, like daring to let it go, let the globe go. Like in the moment when you actually feel that feeling, instead of just running away and just denying everything, trying to forget it, and embracing
people,
it.
if you're a flat earther, you're quite persecuted, aren't you? Because 99% of your family think you're absolutely crazy, and it's like you've killed somebody. You know, the actual feeling from it, it's like hate.
You killed the dream.
Karen,
It's a dream. It's a dream, and when you go,
I've actually had 3 brain operations. Sorry, Arwijn. I've actually had 3 brain operations, and my family think it's a result of those. They think I've been messed about with.
I wonder what they've done. They must put these subliminal messages in the television now. Hate the flat earthers. Hate the flat earthers, because the feeling that you get, and yeah, I know it changes everybody's life, but in a sense, it doesn't change anything, not to your day-to-day living, but it's just all the lies.
But they do. They definitely. But it's not even subliminal. What they just do is they condition you with certain reactions. And it is every time flat Earth is shown on television, they have to ridicule it. You can only approach it in a benign way and just like, oh my God, this is terrible. And whenever like the globe is mentioned, it's like, oh, it's all glorious, and you're in such a great world, and it's a dream, and everything's beautiful. And that's what they do every time space travel. It's like, oh, it's so amazing. That's what
How could we ever believe traveling 1,000 miles an hour, spinning on this ball every day through space, and it just keeps going and going and going, and
you just don't think about it, you know. Just don't start to think about the details. Just imagine the dream, and everything will be all right.
Yeah, don't question it. Yeah.
Yep.
But then they forget to tell you that objects in a vacuum actually get heavier instead of lighter, so there goes your gravity. Right?
Vacuum.
Right.
Oh, the vacuum and buoyancy.
Oh,
they don't like each other. Yeah. Yeah, the heliocentric, or especially the original theory, is just a mess. But it's all based on psychology.
Just put in the chat room, he said, I'm warm and fuzzy because we're going to Mars.
When we start talking about the heliocentric model, I always remind myself of how this originated, according to the 3 what are they called? Aristotle, Socrates, and philosophers. That's the word I was looking for. The 3 philosophers: Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato. They were the 3 main protagonists for the heliocentric thing, and it was all based on a bloke sticking 2 sticks in the ground and measuring the shadows. Can you imagine if a flat earther did that?
Yes, he said that the other day.
I know, but I keep bringing it up because it's so true. I mean, imagine one of us went out and stuck sticks in the ground and said, "Hey, it's flat."
Absolutely, yeah.
Maybe it was easier to know we were flat before the flood because there was a lot more land and they could just keep walking it.
Yeah.
I like, just for kicks, I like to go to this website. It's called thetruesize.com, and you can actually go to it and type in wherever you are, and then grab that continent and drag it around and see how the size changes relative to the ball. So Greenland, if you go to the equator, becomes like almost incredibly small, but because it's stretched to the ball model, it gets huge. And then the United States, right, you can move them around and see what the true size is relative to the 0 point. It's hilarious. That's what happens on the global model. Right?
Everything is set to confuse you so that you don't know what it is, though, isn't it, really?
Yeah, so what's the true size? I don't know. Move it around, see where you're at.
Could you move that Greenland continent further down on that map? I want to see.
Yeah, if you go down
Does it
to
actually become bigger?
No, it gets smaller. Yeah, if you go
Yeah,
down
but
towards
if you go further south, then logically it would.
gets bigger.
Yes, exactly. It
Yeah.
becomes bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just wanted to check.
Yeah, it stretches either way. Yeah.
It becomes really small. The equator, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Really small.
But then when it hits Antarctica, it gets really big.
But it takes a lot longer. You have to go further south. It seems that most of the northern continents are really enlarged relative to the south. It becomes
and it stretches in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very telling.
If you go north, it gets wider on the top. If you go south, it gets narrower and then longer. Right. So that's pretty telling, right? So I thought I'd share that with people.
Yeah, nice.
thetruesize.com, of which I have no copyrights or interest in this website.
But does it change its size all the time? What does that mean then?
It shows you how the projection works. That it's not the literal surface that you're seeing. It's stretched out, and this shows how.
I suppose what it is most people live in the north. Sorry, who was that?
This translation between GPS and the photographs again, but then in another way. Because Africa is actually popping up. It goes bigger in the GPS map. And this is the UTM square.
Yep.
It's translated to the GPS transformation and then the other way around.
Yeah, as you move it around, it warps relative to that center point. Yeah. So this shows you how it's all been
Manipulated.
Yeah. So the projection what they've done is taken the projection, what it is on the ball, and then put it onto the flat, and then this shows you how everything is relatively stretched and morphed to fit the ball. Right? That's what it's doing. So this just gives you an idea of how dramatic that changes the size of things, right? When you try to stretch it out over the ball. So it's fun to play with. It'll certainly bring things into perspective. Yeah. Great entertainment. Yeah.
It is. Usually at the end of the Hangouts, we usually do a bit of summing up between everybody. Wants to do that tonight. Arwijn, what do you think of tonight's Hangout then?
It was good to be back. I feel okay. And I got to make a couple of good points. It was good. Interesting subject. I always like to take I love Chris's work, especially about the electrics and like the ancient times, and this inspires me greatly because there's all these marks to look at on the earth and everything. So I love that stuff.
I think we're
back now, aren't we? You know why we have to come back? I can't take my camera off. Camera, come off. Come on,
I
brother.
think we all
That's
learned
it.
something tonight. I think we all learned that there is a bit of a hole in the heliocentric model with regards to the shadow of the moon. I'm not sure. There may be another explanation that we've not spotted, but it does appear to be the case that there's an explanation that needs to be beaten about like a drum over and over and over again. Because if there was a problem with the model and we didn't do that, we would be letting ourselves down. And we learned tonight it does appear to be the case. It can't happen on a heliocentric model.
Indeed.
Billy?
Yes, it was very nice having Charles on this evening, and it's good to see Arwijn again. And I'm glad he was able to join us. He has a lot of insight, and he has an analytical way of thinking and keeps us on point, and I like that. I always have. Yeah, we had a really good hangout tonight. We discussed various different topics. Looks like people in the chat, and I can say it, we're almost to the end. We didn't get trolled that hard tonight, so that's a good thing.
I didn't see any myself.
That's because all the trolls are in ISIS chat, Flat Earth Court. They're all in there right now.
That very well could be.
What I've noticed is if I stay in ISIS chat, Flat Earth Court, whilst I'm in here, they think I'm in his room, so they stay in there. So I'm kind of doing it to keep them away from me.
Nice.
Hiding from the trolls, are you?
I didn't see any deleting going on today. Was there some? Because I didn't see any.
No, I was gonna say I was gonna mention very first thing, you don't have slow mode on, so we did good. So chat was flowing. There was a lot of information. Well, everything's fine. So like I said, I was a little worried at first, but things went well, and a lot of information was exchanged. People were able to talk and get their points across without being bombarded with spamming, trolling, and
there was a lot of questions at the beginning. Was that at the beginning?
If any of our chat members would like to participate in any one of our hangouts, please send your contact information to Karen's About page. We'd be more than welcome to have you join us in one of our chats. We'd like to get to know our people that come to our chat group. And I know a lot of people are shy and stuff like that, but if you feel like you want to get on our panel and ask some questions or contribute things that you have to offer, like I said, just go to Karen's About page and send her a message, and we'll arrange a time where you can join us in a hangout. We're pretty relaxed. We keep it open here. We love questions. Like I said before, Series really loves questions, and we want to get to know our community better. So
I've got to ask Chris a question before we go offline.
Fire away. Yeah.
Are you a fan of Sons of Anarchy by any chance?
Of who?
Sons of Anarchy.
Sons of Anarchy.
It was a series, an American series about bikers.
I don't recall it. No.
You just Google Sons of Anarchy and then find the character called OB or OP. I think his name might have been. Because looking at your image there, you well remind me of OP.
I got that biker thing going on.
Anthony, you've got your dressing gown on.
This is my king's robe, darling. It's not a gown.
Yeah.
On a few hangouts with my dressing gown on.
Sons of Anarchy. Yeah. I'll look that up. Yeah, thanks for that. I'll check it out.
Yeah, look it up, man.
You gotta get a doppelganger somewhere, eh? Yeah.
You just look like him in the face, and the beard makes it even more like more fitting. But anyway, is this the point where we all have to do the hug and then say our goodbyes?
I think so, unless Charles wants to say anything, Series or Patricia, because Patricia's been very quiet tonight.
I've been asleep.
Patricia.
No, I haven't. No. I'll let everybody else say something. I'm all right. It's been really interesting again. I love Anthony and Stevie's and Charles and Chris and Arwijn, Billy and me. Oh no, I'm sorry.
We love you too. Yeah.
Charles,
thank you very much. Thank you very much for letting me join your group. I've really enjoyed discussing the different topics tonight, and I look forward to doing it again.
I've just got to say this.
Patricia, come back. We're going to do a group hug. We always do a group hug chat room.
Just before we go, I'm noticing that there's Chris, that there's a guy with the white beard. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. And there's another guy with a beard. There's 3 bikers with beards here. I've got a bit of a stubble, but I'm feeling a little bit naked.
Karen has something for beards, I think.
And I'm wondering if
The exception.
Arwyn feels left out as well, because you've not got a beard, Arwyn.
I'll never get a beard.
That's Billy.
I'm
You know,
Anthony, I'm Billy Sunday, bro. What do you mean you don't know me? You know me.
Well,
If you look at my picture, I'm hairy all over.
It's all right, buddy. I mostly sport myself in black and white. That's okay.
I'm just feeling a bit naked without a suitable beard to be in the group, that's all.
It's all right. We'll give it time.
oh, we've lost your picture, Anthony. I don't know why you're not showing. Oh, there you go. Back now. You're going to have a group hug then.
Go on then.
Group hug
Yeah,
and good night,
group hug.
everybody.
Good night,
Love
everybody.
you
in the chat.
all.
Everybody giving a group hug. Yay! Group hug. Thank you to everybody in the chat room. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Arwyn, Billy, Charles. Thank you very much, Chris, for everything you've done tonight. Series.
Yeah, make sure
Patricia, Anthony.
Come back tonight. I guess we have Patricia Steers on tomorrow night. Is that correct, Karen?
She's popping in tomorrow night to say hello.
Great. I just wanted to throw that out there. So we'll have Patricia as a guest tomorrow. So join us again for As the Sun and Moon Turn, or Don't Turn, as they travel straight. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. And good evening, good afternoon, or good morning to everyone. Anyway, time to say goodbye. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
Keep it flat, keep it square. Thank you.
Keep it flat.